Who is Daniel Dalen, the guy that went to China at 12 years old?
Man, if people would only understand 1% of the shit that I had to go through, I don't think many people would have survived that. I have lived in Africa, South America, the US itself, the Middle East, different places in Asia, and nothing even comes close to how the Chinese think, how they move, how they speak, how they operate as a country.
You don't consume other people's content.
Consuming other people's content, it all influences the way you think.
Do you have a monetary goal?
You'll realize that the game we're all playing is not about money. We found out that one of our team members really had a rough time and almost like pretty much broke down because she's a single mom, 3 kids. We paid for a nanny.
How are you picking out the things that are right to work on right now and the things that aren't?
There's 1,000,001 things that you could do. There's always 5 things that you should do. My grandpa ended up taking his own life about a year ago. If you were to ask me what I am most proud of in life, it's the woman that I have by my side. When I sit on this balcony at 5 a.m., I write down the shit that I'm grateful for. There's not been a single day where I don't write down her name.
How fast can you get the packets out of China into people's hands?
We've had successful deliveries door to door from China to the US in as quick as...
That's literally unheard of in this game. Daniel, to say this has been a long time coming for me is short of it, mate. Honestly, this podcast, I've been trying to get this booked in for the last, I'd say 2 years. And I've been chasing you for it. And I'm so glad that you are here today, brother, because your journey and what I've seen you do online and what I know we're going to unpack today is going to be so powerful for everyone listening to this. So welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you so much, man. It's truly an honor, especially having talked to you about how much podcasting means to you and how important it is, especially as someone who's very precious of the brand that he's building and, you know, how to present himself to the world. It's an honor to speak with someone who really, really appreciates that and sees that and especially looks at podcasting as an art. So it's an honor.
Mate, well, what you do and everything you've done on YouTube is an art too. And I love the way that you've created it and curated your life in such a powerful way that people can use to like influence the way they take their life forward. But let's take it way back to the beginning or as far back as we can, because I want to give people context into you being in China and everything you're doing over there with what you're doing. So who is Daniel Dalen, the guy that went to China at 12 years old?
So I come from a very small town in the Netherlands.
Yep.
Both my parents are Dutch. And I think the best way to describe myself is I'm just a misfit. I was the biggest misfit and I never really felt understood. I grew up where we was moving around quite a bit. I was born in Rotterdam in the Netherlands, ended up moving to Amsterdam. We went to Spain, then we went back to the Netherlands and always was the new kid on the block and really didn't fit in. I had very little friends and as I said, was just really a bit of a misfit. That led to my dad taking me to China. My dad was doing a lot of business in China. To be exact, he went for the first time about 25 years ago, where my dad's a designer. So I grew up and every time I was looking for my dad, I would walk into the office and he would be working and he would be drawing. That's what I grew up with. And my dad was always there. I've never been short a day on love. I come from the warmest family that I value and find more important than anything in this life. And he was drawing. And he was drawing, let's say, this ring that I'm wearing here right now. And then those designs were sent to China. And then what happened was that they were producing it and it looked everything but like the drawings my dad made. So my dad was like, we're going to go to China and we're going to show them how it's done. So my dad went to China to actually show them how to do these things. And he ended up taking me with when I was 12. That was the first time where he took me. And I was like, man, I might as well be an even bigger misfit because this is really cool. So throughout those years, I ended up going to China and, you know, really developing interest in the language, the culture, the way they do things, and ultimately also realizing how valuable and of how much impact that actual, like the learnings that I've got on that side of the world are for everything around that side of the world. And that's, you know, kind of like how my story started, where I was really just growing up in China, pretty lonely, and started freelancing from there on.
I love the story about your dad and how powerful he's been in your life, because I imagine that having the love and support from your father has been pivotal in you getting to where you are, right?
Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing that to this day I have such a deep level of respect for, is that my dad's gone through a lot. My dad found his mum in the kitchen who slit her wrists when he was like 14, 15. Wow. His dad was an alcoholic. My dad literally for a year lived on a car graveyard. And he made it big, like, and not as necessarily big and financially, but he has done what I think is the most important thing in life. And that's having an actual family that you're really proud of. And I grew up in the warmest family that has always been the foundation, and to this day is the foundation, and as well as an example for me where I want to go in life and why I work so hard to one day have a family like that. And even when I look at my dad, love of women as much as he loves my mum is something that to me is what this life is about. Because ultimately when you really zoom out, a nice watch, my achievements, the things that I've done, the people that I've impacted, they will ultimately all fade. When I breathe my last breath, I want to be with the people that I love, that I care about, and that I've had the most amount of fun with in my life. So my dad's, and not my dad, like even my mum, I'm super close with both of my parents. The foundation and the trust that they've given me to spread my wings when I was 16 is been, and to this day, a fundamental foundation of me doing what I'm doing today, and also knowing and having my values set in stone that I move from with everything that I do. From speaking to you right now, from running my business, to dealing with my partnerships, to my business partnerships, but also personal partnerships, like my other half, to the team members that I deal with, everything.
Everything comes back from the relationship that you have with your mum and dad.
I think it's been the way they have raised me and really, really showed me what life is really about. We've had it. We were off pretty well. We've always gone on vacation and everything, and we've seen so many ups and downs. And there's been moments where we had to sell our house, where we had to move out and move into a smaller place. But it's never ever been a factor to being more or less happy. So it's really a fundament that I move out of, I'd say. Yeah.
What do you think the fundamental piece to that happiness that they created was, though?
Love.
Just unconditional love.
Unconditional love. Unconditional love. If I, again, taking 2 steps back on what I just shared with you about my dad going through a really, really tough time growing up, knowing how he also shared all of this with me, and my dad really telling me and saying, like, in this lifetime, I want to make sure that everything that has been done wrong to me, I want to do that right to my kids. And I can really tell that is something that he, that's who my dad is,
I think what your dad embodied is he wanted to step into being the man for you guys that he perhaps didn't have in his life when he was growing up. And that's kind of the powerful shift and realization he's had. And I presume that goes through in every essence of how he treats your mum, how he makes you see that he treats your mum, how he wants you to treat people, how he wants you to communicate with the world. He's kind of instilled that in you from day one.
Yeah.
What a beautiful thing to be able to give a child that much substance and confidence and support their growth going through life. Yeah.
No, and I mean, to this day, they're so proud of what I'm doing. And I can just, even tell from how I'm dealing with things and who I am today. It's like a big part I owe to how they've raised me. And it's something that I would, especially in today's world, looking at where there's a lot of voices being heard talking about certain things and, certain things being important. And, like me actually shining some light on that side of things and like what's important on that side too. I feel like that's something that's not happening much right now.
How many years have they been married?
My parents have been married for over, not that long actually, because they have a crazy story too. It's around 35 years now, I believe, top of mind.
Yeah. My mum and dad have been married like 44 years too. And I can, when you're talking into your story and talking about your family and the traditional roles that they played in your upbringing, it resonates massively with me. But I know a lot of the audience, some of them will be coming from broken homes where perhaps one parent's done something or they've not got a relationship. I mean, what would your advice be to those people that perhaps don't have the stable upbringings that me and you have had?
It's really tough because I know how fortunate I am by having had such a pillar to rely on. And currently, even within the business that I'm building and, you know, living the life we're all living, I always say to play the game we're all playing. I've noticed that one of the biggest places for me to improve on is personal, and it's also going to elevate me on business levels. And that is actually because I've had so much foundation growing up, because I've always had someone to rely on. So I have a lot of people that I can talk to about my problems with, which is in general allowed me to develop a lot of empathy, but also just, you know, very easy to reach out to people when there's things that I want to talk about, want to deal with. Now, I've met a lot of people and I'm dealing with a lot of people very close to me as well that did not have that, you know, from team members to people I deeply love. And the thing that I see is the biggest kind of blocker for people that didn't have that growing up is to actually talk, because a lot of that pain and a lot of those struggles and not having felt heard by people that are supposed to love you, because if you think of a family, that's everyone thinks of love, right? It's home, it's a home, it's a place that should create comfort. And if you didn't have that and you couldn't rely on talking about things going on in your life, you know, no matter who you are as a person, it just creates this kind of distant feeling between you and those feelings. So really understanding that it's okay to every now and then not feel okay, and then deal with it, and then obviously in a very balanced way talk about it with people that you really care about and that you know you can trust. And that actually comes down to loyalty, because one thing that I always say, and again, even when I look at my relationship that I have with my other half, with my business partner, the truth is that love only goes so far. And I'll tell you why. Because I've had people that love me stab me in the back. Loyalty is a choice. It's something that you choose to do each and every single day. I choose to stay loyal to the commitments, to the values that I have set for myself, that I know I find important. You know, so find someone that you have this level of trust with, that you can speak to, and slowly start opening up, because ultimately all of our problems, all of our thoughts, you know, it's all in our head. And we all everyone has life happens to all of us. That's what I always tell. It's what I tell to my team members. Because every now and then, you know, like people talk to me about their personal relationship. And I could be like, you know, I'm a founder, we're running the business. Let's talk about business. But I know that also on a personal level, if things are not taken care of in your personal life, if you're not happy, you're also not going to perform at work. And that applies to like each and every single level within my social circle, to, again, those really close to me, my other half, the partnerships that I have, to really actively also seek to talk with these people and make them feel heard, which is something, again, which reflects back on me, is personal development on my side, on even getting better at that. Because one harsh truth that I also had to learn, which is actually pretty fresh, is that I have spent pretty much half my life alone in a room just getting shit done. So I'm not necessarily the best people person. Like, I'm pretty awkward, man, you know, but that doesn't stop me from understanding how important it is, and to really, really get back to your question, to be the person that people can rely on to speak with, to actually talk about what's going on in their life, and have like a little bit of an output to deal with those things. Because if you keep them inside, they're going to bite you in the ass. You know, it's like, there's no way to not have those things just disappear, you know?
Yeah. Have you had a specific framework that you've used to make sure that your values are fully aligned?
Yeah. Look back on all the shit that I've done wrong. I have, you know, messed up like a bunch of times. I lost pretty much all my money when I was about 22, 23 by like making really stupid crypto investments and all of that, and like trusting the wrong people. And I'm very grateful all of those things happened, because they have taught me what I find important and how I should deal with all of those things. So my beliefs, my values are simply just acknowledgement of the results of my own actions. Like, I understand that behaving in a certain way, positioning myself in a certain way, which goes so many levels down, from within my relationships, like personal, private, to the things that I do on YouTube. I am so aware of how I position myself and what the actual result of that positioning is. And it's just because I'm very aware of the impact and the things I do have on other people, which is, again, knowing that you can define your values. It's like, hey, you know, what do you want to be known for? It's something that for these last months especially, I've been waking up at around 5:30 every single morning. I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for, and I remind myself of what I want people to remind me for. When Daniel Dalen breathes his last breath, what do I want the people that were close to me, that were around to me, that watch me, remember me for? And that is something that is just such a simple practice that really just allows me to be aware of what's important to me. How do, you know, like if you ask any person, how do you want to be remembered? No one's going to say like, yeah, I want to be remembered like a dick, you know, like someone who's mean to everyone. You know, maybe there's some people, but I definitely do not want to be known for that, right?
How do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered as someone who's always showed interest in other people, who's always been kind, and who's always led by example. That's pretty much like the most simplest way of how I want to be known, or how I want people to remember me. And most importantly, I want to be, especially, and I've touched on this like a little bit, just a little bit earlier, on how there's so many people that have their voice heard that, in my opinion, are not necessarily telling the right things to the new generation. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I find is so important is, you know, I want to be a good family guy. I want to be the best dad in the world one day, to do everything that my dad did right for me even better, you know, and like even for my other half, like I want to be someone that she can rely on, that she knows day in, day out, I choose her, just as how I am loyal within every single partnership and business that I have, and that I can look myself in the mirror. And that's something that I know I can be known for, also with the audience that I'm building and how I'm doing it. And it's a very simple practice, but just what do you want to be known for, you know?
It's so important, and we were talking about this before the podcast in relation to how you planned out and whiteboarded who you are as a person before you started to even create content, so that you could include every pillar of yourself within the content, which I think a lot of creators these days, and a lot of podcasts as well, they're basically clip farming. They go on, they talk, they rattle off some stuff, they clip farm it, they become the character version of themselves, which is not even their authentic self, and then put that out to the world. And I think that's the pivotal piece that you got so right. Maybe it was intentionally at the time, maybe it was a little bit accidentally, but you got it right because you planned the pillars out the same way that I knew when I started this podcast. I thought there's got to be a deep why. Why do you want to do this podcast? And the why for my podcast at the time was to help people break patterns and flip perspectives in their life so they could have more clarity, more direction, and more success, right? And when you have a powerful why like that, the same way that you're going to tell your why in a minute, that cuts through, and that's what makes impact on people.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, what we were speaking about earlier was essentially how I put together my brand.
Guys, I don't ask you for much, but today I'm asking you for a solid favor. If you are getting value out of this conversation, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. It lets me know that we're making the right content and it's hitting your eyes at the right time.
And I think especially, you know, looking at the, call it creator economy, just like rapidly growing, and there's a massive interest of founders actually documenting, and that's something that I would love to share on here, because I know there's going to be a lot of people listening and watching. And one of the very powerful things about documenting is that content compounds. There's so much value to me saying to you right now, I'm going to do this, and a year from now, I've done it.
Yeah.
There is so much value to that. There's so much authority and also connection and culture that can be built on top of those pillars. Taking you back to the pillars. When I started and when I knew I was ready to enter the content space, I basically just walked to a whiteboard and I was like, who's Daniel Dalen? I took each and every single parameter that makes Daniel Dalen and used each and every single one to my advantage. In today's field, you know, especially for those that are creating content, that are posting content, it is so easy to be put into a bucket. There's a certain set of creators that have really paved the path, that have defined a style for themselves, just as how I've done with my own style. And even nearing that style, you're put into a bucket. You're never going to be the next person if you keep falling into that bucket. And that was something that I was very cautious of. Like, how can I position myself, use all of the parameters that I have close to me to my advantage to curate this brand that is its own bucket. And that's what I start doing. And obviously, like, parameters from speaking Chinese to living in a very unique country in the world to having seen pretty much every single part in the world, as in like the perspectives, and also just knowing my capabilities of being creative, the businesses that I run, how I am with people, the multiple languages that I speak, and just like everything that I have to give to this world. That's what I all put on this whiteboard. And then I just put together this brand. Like, this is Daniel Dalen. This is what I want to be remembered for. And then the biggest, I would say, cherry on the pie is authenticity. I feel like you said, there's so many people, and I can only imagine how exhausting it must be to like act like you're someone else. I think, like, I don't beat around the bush of dealing with insecurities, or that, running the business that I'm running is really hard, and that not everything goes as smooth as I hoped it to be. But all those things are relatable, which I feel like not many people do. And you create a bit of a gap between you and those that are watching, so those are all things that I just took into the equation of my personal brand. Like, what do I find important? How do I want, like, really think about how do I want to make people feel, and how can I use my unique skill sets, background to my advantage to grab attention and then feed knowledge that can actually help.
Yeah, and you're actually impacting people because the thought process behind it comes from the right place. Mm-hmm. You, like I was saying, you see a lot of people come with content from a similar angle. I've seen lots of people copy your thumbnails, copy the way that you're editing content. But what that misses is the story of who you had to become throughout your pillars to be able to even put that content together in the first place.
Exactly.
And when you miss that part, it's like you've just missed the whole key component as to why Daniel's content is blowing up on the internet and why you're cutting through noise. You can't cut through if you're trying to look like you.
Exactly. Yeah.
You have to look like a... So if we were to say to this audience right now, how could they formulate the most authentic version of themselves and put it out there? Would you just say to them, go to the whiteboard, or what would you say?
Use it as a stepping stone. It's not bad to start and trying out, because just as how I mentioned of how I've curated my values and what I stand for as a person comes out of learnings created through pain. So the mistakes that I've made have taught me lessons that allowed me to understand what I found important, and also how that would potentially make other people feel, to define how I want to be as a person. Yeah. Same thing applies to creating, is trying out things that feel very close to you. What I'm doing is so close to me. I don't have to ever think about it or complicate things, because I know that this is something that stands so close to me. It's like as if I'm talking to my younger self, and I figured out this format, played with all of these parameters, and found a format that really aligns with me, and obviously is, fair to say, taking the internet by storm to get that message out, right? So everyone watching and whoever wants to like build their own brand, it's understand yourself at first, understand what you're working with, because the truth is, like, you can create content, but you've got to create about something that also actually interests people, right? If you, and again, that's not necessarily 100% true, because also content compounds, but at least know where you're going, at least know who you're going to be. Not just document for the sake of documenting. I mean, if 10 people would have watched my stuff, I would still be happy. That's how I started. I just put it out there, no expectations, and it did way better than I would ever thought it would be,
Well, if you embody every pillar of what you do on a daily basis as your content, then no one can ever say it's not authentically yourself, and no one can ever question the narrative. In essence, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So just really understand that key fundamental before you start. I mean, one of the things, I don't know if this resonates with you, but one of the things that I said to myself about this podcast was this, when I created it, was I don't want a podcast that people just listen to. I want a podcast that people feel as well.
Yeah.
Because that's what I think a lot of podcasts are missing, that feeling part. I hope people feel this conversation as much as they hear it.
Yeah.
It's that connection piece there allows you to cut through a lot of noise.
100%. That's something that I feel like throughout my content is something that I actively focus on. I, had so many moments where I really feel like I am speaking to someone, and I'm just actually like trying to make them feel the energy that is happening here in this room between you and I right now, like the actual energy. And I get into this, and I have it right now. I get into this state where I am speaking from my heart. It's as if there's no filter in between my heart and my mouth. It just keeps flowing. I just keep talking, and it comes out of the most genuine place. And there's this energy that I have, like, that's why, you know, I've been saying to everyone around me, like, we have to document what we do, because the amount of impact that it will have and showing people what's possible, doing it, and how we are as people will bring such positive impact to everyone, because it's making them feel and making them see what could be possible, how happy you could be while doing the things that I'm doing, you know. And you have to feel it in order to understand it, in order to be triggered enough to take action.
One of the things that I know you do that I picked up on from our previous conversation before we started this podcast was that I thought that I want to tell this audience, because I think it's powerful, is you don't consume other people's content. Correct. Which allows you to keep the authenticity piece that perhaps everyone wouldn't hear.
People do not understand that consuming other people's content is not even consuming other content. The music you listen to, the places you go to, the people you hang out with, the content you consume, it all influences the way you think. People always think so lightly of doing simple things like consuming memes in the morning, whatever it may be. It's those little things that really form your perspective. And I've noticed myself, which is a very natural thing, everyone compares.
Yeah.
It's a very natural thing.
Yeah. And I think what you've done as well, you've created your friend group, your business partners, your girlfriend, and your family values. They're all curated to, like, you just turn up in the morning, you wake up in the morning, you go out on the balcony, you write the things you're grateful for, and then you do what no one else does. You don't do the 6-hour morning routine. You get to work on the big dominoes that move the key areas of your life forward and execute on your plan relentlessly. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what people don't see.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I also try and show the world and highlight that energy, is that, you know, I mean, my static POV shots, there's a very deep meaning behind them, because the fact that, and they're called match cuts because you essentially just have one static shot and then you switch between times. It's what I feel like I've done really well is make the boring stuff look cool. And every entrepreneur, everyone who is building something can relate to like a relentless day of just getting shit done and sitting in that room until the sun rises and until it goes down and just works, just chases that thing that he wants or she wants to get. You know, so there's there's lots of connections between my content and my audience watching.
And this is why it's so important that you understand who you are as the most key fundamental point before you start making content, because the thesis and the thought process that you have behind why you're creating this piece of work, which me and you both call art. I know that we both think of it as art. That is what you need. You need to get to that granular level. Unless you are at that granular level, you can't even start to formulate any form of brand with a name on the internet. Talking to, obviously you go to China. I really want to get this out of you. Where you go to China, you're there with your dad. You're developing. You're learning from your dad's designs. You're learning from the manufacturing. He's teaching you. He's taking you around these factories. You're learning this game. You start to learn Chinese. Walk me through the process of like you going from learning Chinese and getting Mandarin mastered to then obviously going in and starting in 3PLs and all this stuff that you're doing right now.
So as I mentioned, when I first went to China, I was like, man, I might as well be an even bigger misfit. And there's a word in Chinese which is 外国人, which means foreigner, but it actually literally translates to alien. And I've always found that pretty funny because it actually really, really highlights that sometimes we feel like aliens, because the gap between culture and language is unlike anything I have ever seen. I have lived in Africa, I've lived in South America, in the US itself, the Middle East, different places in Asia, and nothing even comes close to how the Chinese think, how they move, how they speak, and how they operate as a country. It's one of a kind. So me going there as a I was about 16 when I really moved there, starting to learn the language. It was tough. I ended up dropping out of school when I was 16. I've learned my English through gaming. I've never had a proper English lesson ever. It's all just been me, myself, mastering this language. And I did the same with Chinese. So I was freelancing and I started working and freelancing while I was in China. I ended up going to Guilin, which is in the middle of nowhere. It's beautiful. They call it something about like it's kind of like heaven on earth or something. That's what they call it. I forgot the actual like way they say it. And I went there and I took 7 hours of private lesson, one-on-one of Chinese every single day for a year straight while I was freelancing.
7 hours a day?
7 hours a day, yeah. Just one-on-one tutoring and just speaking. And within 1 year, I managed to... So for those that study Chinese, you have... It's called HSK, which is called Hanyu Shuiping Kaoshi, which means Foreigner Chinese Proficiency Test, along the lines of that, something like that. And you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And usually it takes like years to get to level 5. Multiple years. I don't know the exact number top of mind, but I know it's multiple years. It took me 1 year. And I was using it on a day-to-day basis as well, because I ended up freelancing with actually a company that was selling a lot of products on Amazon, and I was helping them do the branding. So I would like draw kids cartoons for them to put on the products, make sure there was no spelling errors. So I was speaking on a day-to-day basis with all of these teams as well. And that's also when I was about 17, 18, when I got my first experience really leading like small teams in Chinese then.
And what you're talking about here essentially is what I call the apprenticeship. You basically, for the longest time, have done the apprenticeship to language, the apprenticeship to culture, the apprenticeship to, how e-commerce works, how building a brand works. You've done all these things before you've gone and put it together as a piece of art and put it on the internet. You've had to go through all these different chapters and learn. I think when people look at people like yourself that are successful online, they think it all comes in a moment. But really what you're saying is it comes over a long, long period.
Man, if people would only understand 1% of the shit that I had to go through to be sitting here with you right now, talking from the person who I am today, I don't think many people would have survived that. The shit that I've gone through, the hardship that I had to go through, the dedication, the sacrifices that I had to make to get to this point, knowing also that I'm ready for showing the world who I am, has been a tough one.
What if you were going to put it, one of the hard things out to the world, what has one of the hardest things been for you?
Disappointment, trusting the wrong people.
Yeah.
Really being stabbed in the back, like I said, that loyalty. That's why, man, if you're in my circle, you're my circle. I'd take a bullet for you. And that applies to, again, other half, business partners, because I know how fucked up it has been for me. But
do you not believe that was a universal test to make you understand how much you value loyalty? So it's more of a thank you than a
100,000%. Yeah, but it was still tough.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've experienced that many levels in my own life, and it's so hard when you try and give the world your full authentic self. What happens is you leave yourself wide open to getting those kind of things happen to you.
Yeah.
I remember losing $500,000 myself in a week, and the effect that had on my life. And when you're trying to build something, I think we can both speak into this, that we're both trying to build things for our family. In essence, we're not doing it just to collect money and collect fun tokens. We actually want to build something of substance and be able to help our families, right? And when stuff gets taken off your table like that, it really, really deeply cuts you. When you got deeply cut in your situation, what did you do to overcome that and not become bitter?
I was down deep, man. I lost my self-respect because of losing, multiple 7 figures at a super young age, 23, and I fucking made it. I got kicked straight back into my parents' bedroom. My old bedroom in my parents' place, and just sat there, feeling sorry for myself. Really being kicked down, twisted understanding of values, of why this happened to me, of greed, of anger, and it's only been until a couple years ago where I really felt like I've recovered from that, because I ultimately just noticed that there was a lot of people around me that were projecting their insecurities on me while I was doing nothing else but trying out of a very genuine place, and that really, really getting to me and actually taking over, So for me, it was just a period of trying to find that belief in myself, reminding myself of it, and putting in an undeniable amount of work to actually get the results that show that I am who I am.
What were some of the key red flags that you overlooked within these deals that cost you that much money?
Who you're dealing with, like really who you're dealing with. Like, what's the reason someone's in it for? You know, some people are in it. Some people are in it for fame. Some people are in it for the money. Some people are in it because they would not want to do anything else rather than doing that because they love it so much. Really understanding the reasoning, like why is someone in this business or why is someone in this proposition in general? What's their why? You know, and it says a lot about their why on like how they will behave when things get tough, because partnership is not necessarily about when things go right, but it's about when things go tough, when things go south, when you have to deal and clean shit up together. You know, what's that person going to be like then? That's what that's really taught me.
So it really does come back down to understanding what the other party's values are.
Yeah. I mean, I'm noticing it right now where we're growing to a company of, we're like crossing like 3 figures in employees, where there's currently layers being formed in our company where people watch my videos. Like there's going to be team members that will watch this podcast that I don't speak to, but that are paid by me. Now, keeping that in mind, it's for me currently the most important thing to grow on a personal level, to make sure that every single layer within the company is heard, that the people that manage those people that potentially feel very distant from me as a founder or my business partner, to still feel heard, to feel inspired, and to be in an environment where they can thrive, where they can grow, where they feel like they can manage both their personal happiness as well as be really happy at their job and feel like they have impact. And that is something that comes down to personal development, you know, and that is again, like really what I've had to look myself in the mirror for, like, who am I and what do I want to be remembered for? Do I want to be remembered for a founder that has been so distant by his company and that does not know that there's like a handful of people really struggling in his company because they're swimming in 1,000,001 tasks, while putting the right people in place or making sure that they are heard can automate and structure things well for them to do their job even better and be more happy and potentially make more money because they'll make us more money and then be able to take care of their family even better. You know, I mean, we pay for people's, to give you an example, and this is fresh at the bat. Yesterday night, we found out that one of our team members really had a rough time and almost like pretty much broke down because she's a single mom, 3 kids. We paid for a nanny. And there's not many companies that would go to that extent because it's always coming down to the people. In this life, we deal with nothing else but people. Any business. The products you build, the people that use your service, the people that use your products, the team members that work at your company, the business partners, the conversation that you and I are having right now, it only comes down to the people.
And the connection that you can have with those people, and how you can, just by making someone feel heard or seen, that is the most powerful thing you can put into any brand, any business, or any part of life.
The most famous Chinese saying is the smartest people in the room are the ones that listen. You can have, and I had to learn this the hard way, man, because I love fucking talking, man. Like, I know I'm good at it too, you know, and it's my girl who actually really just puts me with both feet back on the ground, slaps me in the face, like, man, shut the fuck up about yourself.
Yeah.
Because you can have a full-on conversation and you can speak 10% of the entire conversation and someone would leave that conversation like, oh my God, that person is so nice. That person is so nice. Wow. Even though they don't know anything about them.
Because they made them feel heard.
Exactly. And that's like a big realization for me. And especially as someone who now has a voice that is being heard, you know, it's like punch in the face every now and then, you know?
If you want to put it in an even better context, it's like, it's the psychology of women. You know, most women that come and tell you problems don't want you to solve anything. They just want to listen. You should listen. Just listen.
Yeah.
Just sometimes listen. That's
Yeah.
it. That's all it is.
Yeah.
You don't even have to solve anything. Just wants to be heard.
Yeah, but
that is the analogy I take towards life.
Yeah.
We all just want to be heard, right?
Exactly.
People want to tell their story. They want to be able to articulate it. They want to be able to know that, okay, well, yeah, we work for Daniel. Yeah, we work for Vince. But at the end of the day, like, who they know who I am as well. They know that I've got, 2 children, and they know that I'm working hard to provide for these children in China.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to setting up companies in China and facilitating staff, the number that you have, how are you? Obviously, China's known for poor work quality, not poor work quality, but like poor work environments.
Mm-hmm.
it's known for that. Like with everything that happens in Apple, the nets around the top of the buildings to stop people jumping off. Like, how do you make sure that when you are like facilitating business in China, that you're carrying yourselves in a way where you give this good environment?
So in China in itself, and there's a thing in China which is called 779, I believe, top of mind. No, sorry, 997, which has been banned in China, and that comes down to working 7 days a week from 9 to 9, and that was a massive thing across all of China, and the government actually like refrained anyone from having those hours in the company because it's just simply inhumane. You can't keep up 7 days a week, 9 to 9. It's just impossible, you know? So with our kind of like local facilities and everything that we do, and even within our like communication channels, it's like simple things that make the difference, like an off-work channel, you know, where people send photos of their dog. Like we try and make, obviously, to make it a nice environment to work and make sure that there's proper shifts. So what we do is we roulate our companies, our operators, our warehouse workers and everything according to shifts, so that there's always a certain amount of days off, because China is known to work around the clock nonstop. So we make sure that we obviously create that room and create that little bit of freedom within our working environment that not only applies to like our China operations, but also within our own operations, just making sure that there's obviously the level of quality that we want to have. Like we on average have 3 to 5 minutes average response time to any message when working with us, any message. And that comes out of a place of understanding as well, which I've spoken to you about earlier. Everything we do comes out of a place that was once pain, that is understood pain, and now is turned into a solution because we really understand that pain. And when you deal with China, you're essentially managing your business from 9,000 kilometers away, speaking with people that can barely speak with you because there's such a big language barrier. And we just want to like have everyone who works with us and everyone who deals with China experience all the upside without the downside.
What are some of the things then that you've done within your business that allows you to deal with the Chinese on a level where they give you respect as well? Because I see a lot of brands going into that marketplace and they kind of, I think they go in there with the wrong attitude. They're looking for the cheapest prices. They're looking for to screw things down to the floor. They just want to get the biggest output out of China that they can for the lowest amount of cost, which I don't think is perhaps the proper way to do business in China. So give me a bit of an insight into that.
So to begin with, to earn respect, obviously speaking the language is a massive one for me. It directly shows the actual interest in the culture. And also, I mean, to this day, you know, people's jaw drop on the table when I do start speaking. And that's not only because I speak, you know, you can speak like a few phrases, like you don't even sound that I'm not from there, you know, and that ultimately already creates like a very serious level of respect because they know, man, this guy's really put in the work to even understand us. So that for me, from my personal perspective, is obviously a big way on how I get things done and get into rooms that no one gets in and deals that no one gets done. So that's my side of things. But when dealing with China, the thing is, there's a massive left side and a massive right side of like what you just asked me, because there's certain people that deal with China that simply really get screwed over. You know, like I have saved brands tens of millions of dollars on yearly basis with just a few simple tricks. And there's brands where I have, you know, put in a lot of work and we really couldn't get anything done just in terms of safety measures, of certificates and making sure that things were properly set up. Also making sure that they could actually exit their brand, but not necessarily anything in terms of pricing, but more like payment terms. Certain suppliers or certain agents just have disgusting margins. And that's also something that I try and, because a lot of people ask me, hey, do you source or whatever? Do you do this? Do you do that? No, I just help you get a better relationship with China. And that's also what we do with our business, is because no one is able, and I can confidently say that really understands both worlds better than I do. So forming that bridge to get the best out of that partnership is what we really do and what we really help with. Because sometimes, yeah, you're getting fucked over and you're probably paying like a couple mil too much each and every single year. Wow. You know, and sometimes you have a really good supplier, you know, and it's not really fair to actually, you know, squeeze people to the bone and get the most out of it.
You need to understand what you have, so you need to be able to understand it from the level that you're saying.
Exactly.
Because if you can't understand that psychological piece of what you actually have before you go and start to negotiate, you don't know what position you're coming from. You mentioned there as well, there's a few little hacks, tricks that you've implemented in the brands that have saved like tens of millions of dollars. Yeah. What are those?
It sounds so simple and it's so straightforward, but it's understanding the price quality comparison of the things that you buy. You know how many people have just found like one really good manufacturer and just stuck to them for like the last couple of 5 years and they never even visited them, and they've paid like tens of millions of dollars just to the factory. Understanding in general what the price quality comparison looks like for your type of products is something so good to start with. And that doesn't even mean that you have to switch suppliers, but it just allows you to create an understanding of what's the market value and production rate of these products. It is so simple, but no one does it.
How do I do it though? How do I do it?
I mean, you can call me.
Yeah. No, but if I wanted to go there and I didn't know you,
you would basically just like start actually sourcing. So you go on websites like 168A, Alibaba, and you obviously take them off platform, but you build and develop a relationship with these suppliers and you send them your products even to get an understanding. Like another really fun thing that you know we always do when we speak to clients or whatever, it's like if you tell me where you're buying these microphones from, for example, like let's say this was your brand, and you tell me like, hey, this is coming from Shanghai, I could tell you like, oh, you're dealing with a trading company. They'd be like, how do you know? It's like because they don't produce electronics in Shanghai. They don't produce it in that region. That's all Shenzhen, Guangdong, Guangzhou, Dongguan, Foshan. It's like all those areas, like, you know.
So you can already tell instantly that there's another 33% margin on that product just from where they're telling you that they're getting it from and jurisdiction.
First question I ask, yeah.
Yeah, it's powerful. And it sounds, like you say, the tricks that you're telling people on this podcast, they do sound so simple, but simple things cost people a lot of money.
They do. And also because, again, like, as I was saying, the gap between even getting that done properly and not being fucked over again requires someone who really understands the market and really understands the culture and how to even do those things, or how to even like not upset your supplier by sending your products to another manufacturer just to create that perspective.
Well, let's go into that, because obviously you're saying source from 2 or 3 suppliers, send them to one another, see if they can make this and how much can they make it for. Obviously, we're trying to cut our margins down, cut our costs down. I understand that. But at what point is that taking the piss? Like in terms of like in the Chinese culture?
Not really anytime soon. It's just business. It's just business, like creating an understanding of, you know, because like it's not always, it's kind of like a triangle. You have your terms, which is the one at the top. Then you have your price. And then on the other side, you have your quality. And the higher you go up in terms, the more likely you're going to tilt to like one side, which is either sacrificing a lot of quality or sacrificing to pay a higher price to get better terms and higher quality. Or the other way around, lower price, lower quality, but better terms, for example. So it's not necessarily always a moment of saying like, hey, we have to get better prices. Like there's been a lot of times where I actually advise brands to pay a little more in order to get better terms. To give you an example, there's brands that work with us that essentially can, as long as you know how to move your product, you can scale infinitely, because they have 30 days post-production agreements, as in like payments to their suppliers. But when fulfilling with our company, 1 day post-production, you can actually start selling your products instead of putting it on a boat for 60 days. So you get to unlock your cash while you haven't even paid your supplier in a time frame of 30 days.
How have you streamlined that?
By having really good local operators in place, where as soon as people are ready to inbound stock, we speak to them and their suppliers and make sure that that is all just like, you know, streamlined and put into our warehouse and updated once they're ready to sell.
So how did you first come across these pain points in your own business in order for you to be able to build out the facilities that can facilitate this?
So I take zero credit in the ecom knowledge, because I have been dealing with China and helping everyone in ecom, but I don't necessarily have the understanding of the actual pain points. I do now, but like it was more my business partner who really brings the ecom knowledge to what it is that we do to solve these problems. Because and I know he's good with that, of me mentioning these brands, but for example, one of his brands, Door and Rose, the pain points that they faced from struggling with cash flow because of having to put so much money into stock, multiple warehouses, to also reaching new markets, was really stagnating their growth. As soon as they again, solving that pain point, which came out of a place of understanding through our solution, fulfilling basically from a centralized supply chain in China, allowed them to like quadruple their brand in no time.
And how fast can you get the packets out of China into people's hands?
We've had successful deliveries door to door from China to the US in as quick as 3 days.
That's literally unheard of in this game. I've never heard that before.
I'm telling you, that's what I'm saying. It's like, and that's something that, you know, for everyone watching as well, what is happening right now, and that's also why I'm going so hard on this, even activating all of the content stuff, is to make people aware, because what I'm experiencing here and right now in this moment is right time, right market. It's all market timing. This is the right time for something like this to happen.
Yeah.
This is unheard of. Centralized supply chains around production hubs and fulfilling your orders to over 100 plus countries. And on top of that, one thing that we've also done is hide the actual China region. So we've integrated over 100 carriers. And that, again, is like my background, my software background, which I'd love to, you know, I think we should tap into that a bit as well.
Yeah. We're going there. Don't worry. We're going there. We're going there. I've not forgot.
We have integrated over 100 carriers to allow us to hide the China region. So you only use the local domestic shipping links and like the carrier details to provide your customers with information. So in the US, which again, like cross state, sometimes we're even faster, get a full local experience.
So they don't even tell when it gets to their door that it's been packed, picked in China, posted from China. Because normally if you're taking it out of China on a 7-day, 10-day packet, e-packet, I think they call it over there, if it would come through, it'd all be Chinese branded. It looks like a dropshipping product. Yeah, it's like it's a real naff experience. How have you integrated your clients' packaging and all that kind of stuff in terms of like the unboxing experience when it comes to these e-com stuff?
So that's more kind of like actually the client's decision to do that, but we do advise and we just obviously steer them in the right direction, because what we do, and we look at it as what we do is really a given, like good quality fulfillment, and China fulfillment is not something that's necessarily new, but we do optimize for obviously the best speed, the best quality, the best support around it, and also the actual advisory and software that we built all around it. So to get back to your question, we ended up closing a deal with one of my other business partners, Jason, where we actually start buying like factories, packaging factories mainly, to also facilitate that process and cut out the middleman there as well. So back to Vince's brands, we've saved them on a yearly basis $500,000 on the packaging alone, in combination with reducing the weight of the packaging, because fulfilling from China is based on weight. So those are all things that we just like help our clients with and really become the one-stop shop for anything that you need to get done in China.
So you really do, you take it to such a granular level, don't you? You're taking the weight out of the packaging so you can bring the cost of the shipping down. You're shipping from China to speed it up. You've packaged it so that when the US customer or the customer in the, wherever they are, UK, US, Greece, they feel like it's come, directly from the brand. The brand gets to implement their packaging in the process to make sure that the unboxing experience for the person that receives the parcel is epic as well.
It's just like any other 3PL. It's just not locally. Like the way the package is actually, the product is actually packaged is still like the normal process on how it would go.
So if you were to put it in a percentage term, Daniel, on how much brands on average could save by fulfilling from China in the way that you're saying right now compared to what they are currently doing, how much would that be roughly if you were just going to give a ballpark?
It's not necessarily saving, it's more the efficiency, because in certain cases you can save a lot. Like there's been brands which we've saved a lot of money, but it's not always necessarily the saving. It's more the convenience of basically having our facility neighbor your manufacturer and get goods in as quick as 30 days max, depending on obviously what products. And then one thing that is so big is that people do not understand that they're missing out on so much revenue because of continuously being out of stock. And that's when working with us, something that you can very quickly solve, because, again, back to one of Vince's brands, I've helped them negotiate a deal with the suppliers where they would pre-produce all the material. So their lead time is actually like 2 weeks to just get new product in.
And so normally this would be 90 days, right?
Normally this would be 90 days, at least. It's really, really, really big. Yeah.
I love it. And I think that just cuts out so much noise for the brand owner as well, in terms of like there's not as many moving parts as, because one of the key reasons I've not done a product yet on the back of the podcast, which I've wanted to do for the longest time, and I was telling you about it, is because I didn't want to have to ship a container full of stuff, sell it, and then do it again and do it again. It's all that.
It's so cumbersome.
And that becomes like the worst experience in the world for you trying to build something that's sustainable and can grow at a speed. Yeah. The last thing you want to be is out of stock, have to buy another lump, out of stock, have to buy another lump, so this kind of really does fix all the biggest pain points within the e-commerce space.
Yeah, it's really, again, like, it's especially here, like, I mean, my brand, who I am, how I position myself. We've been talking about this in this podcast, and it's like, there's no need for me to sell what it is that we do. Brands should run the numbers and they should see if it makes sense for them, because there's nothing to sell. It just makes complete sense.
I know a clothing brand, a very famous clothing brand in the UK that you know as well, that my friend's also insourcing. His name's Kian.
Yeah.
And he's also insourcing. He's massive in China as well.
Quick one for you guys. You may have seen I've started to mentor people, because I was getting people in the DMs reaching out, asking me for loads of different advice and guidance through many realms of what I've been through in my life. And I've created a mentorship program now that helps you create the reality that you want to live. It helps you make more money. On average, an extra 30 to 100k there is that's lying within your business that you don't know where it is or how to access it. I help people access that, and I also help them get every other area of their life right, so they can improve their relationships, so they can improve the way they communicate, the way they network, and everything else. We work on the whole package. It's not just one area. We're not just in the pursuit of money, but we're in the pursuit of the purpose and the money, and aligning it all together so that you go in the right direction to being the best version of yourself. If that is something that resonates with you on every level of your being, and you want to work with me to take yourself to the next level, I would love you to click the link below this video and go to my mentorship page and make an inquiry.
Coffee this morning.
Oh, that's brilliant. Kian, right? Yeah. So you know he's legit, right? Yeah. So my mate Kian goes to this clothing brand and finds out that when their clothing is leaving in the container from China, that they've not even got someone checking the containers for the quality control before they're even shipping the shipment from there in a container and landing it in the UK. Just by putting in that one little process alone, Kian saved them millions of pounds. Because what's the point in knowing that when you land in the UK that you've got a problem when it could be picked up in China on the ground? But there's that clothing brand does about 100 million a year, and they weren't doing that. So what I'm saying is there'll be a lot of people in the e-com space, or people with brands online that want fulfillment, that don't understand that level of stuff, and that are making a lot less than 100 million a year.
It is really, I've broken it down into 4 buckets. You have product, then you have kind of like your setup, so just like your selling, like marketing, then you have distribution, and then you have optimization. Every single e-com guy that I know, especially that does numbers, has a rock solid solution in all of these 3. But when it comes to product, no one knows. Something like this, like the fact that they do not do a proper quality control, and that goes to an extent, because I know how Kian does it, like it is applying proper structure, tech packs during the production, jumping in, checking the specific quality, making sure that you even take the lab tests of the product itself to see if they're actually using the composition that you've agreed on in terms of material. Going to those extents is costing you very little money with so much impact.
I know, like when I did the podcast with him, and with the level that we go into in that podcast as well, it just he just basically shows you everything that brands overlook, the same way that you're showing what everything people overlook. It's just so many things that are super simple but overlooked, especially when it comes to anything you're doing in China. Yeah. And what you're saying can literally save people millions and millions of pounds a year. And
also, just like, as you want to, obviously, I mean, like a lot of these guys that build their brands is an asset, right? And hopefully one day it could be sold. So even having like proper agreements in place and just knowing what the hell is going on that side of the world just helps with the actual brand valuation.
Well, Joe Foster told me, who's the founder of Reebok, he said to me the most important thing that he ever did was have like a sealed sample in both countries that was referred to before anything was sent as well, right? which again sounds like a basic thing, but how many brands do we both know that are doing hundreds of millions that don't have that, right?
Yeah.
You know, even Gymshark in the early days when they were doing hundreds of millions, they didn't have that in place, you know? So there's a lot to be said for people like entrepreneurs like Joe Foster that are way ahead of their time on all this stuff, you know, because he was doing these what quote unquote tech packs and stuff like that before it was even probably called a tech pack, you know. So you really have to study the depth of what you go to, Daniel, to kind of really unlock these hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars extra that people are leaving on the table, don't they? Let's just go into this software background, because I know we touched on it, but I want to really go in depth on that, because you said you implemented the software and that's obviously saved you a ton of money, but I also understand from a higher level that it's building enterprise value within your brands that's a saleable asset. So how did you get into software, and how did you apply the knowledge of the software to structuring it right? So
especially when I grew up and when I started going through these different phases in my career where I started freelancing and I started doing everything I could basically to be in control of the process, which a famous quote of my mum, just because you can do everything doesn't mean you should do everything. And I started to very naturally take on all these responsibilities and being in control of like design and also production. And then I was like, oh, this needs to be on a website. So I started coding websites. So I slowly started to get into development and coding and putting systems and automations in place by really just systematic thinking. And I've spoken about this with one of my team members before, funny enough, where I feel like there's some correlation between the actual structure that Chinese language has and the way I like just look at structuring things when it comes to like coding and building stuff, because it's very systemized. And I'll give you an example in Chinese and then I'll try and connect it to how I build software. But if, for example, I would say, I'm currently in Dubai and I'm recording a video, I would say, 我现在在迪拜在拍一个视频. The literal translation is me, currently, Dubai, action, shooting a video. And it's like really systematic. And like even when you start playing around that, if you want to say like I in the morning am shooting a video in Dubai, you would say 我这个早上在迪拜在拍一个视频, which again then says me in the morning in Dubai am shooting a video. So that's also why, for example, when you speak with the Chinese and they you know, they're like really local and they speak a little bit of English, it's always like, you go there, or no, I know want, or whatever. You know, it's like, because it's like literally translated from such a systematic build up with very clear structure on how to communicate. Now, how does that correlate to software? The biggest mistake people make when building software is building shit that people don't need. What we always do is we let user feedback drive how we build products. And that is done in a very systematic way. I always use a beautiful analogy about a car. So let's say you and I, after this podcast, we go to the dealership and we walk into whatever. What's your favorite car?
Right now, I'd say just Lamborghini Huracan. We go to Lamborghini, we walk into the store, and we check out every single detail. The leather, the color of the car, the dashboard, the steering wheel, everything. And you get in the car, you try and start it, and the car doesn't even drive. People put all the bells and whistles on the thing that they build without really understanding the core value proposition of what it is that they're solving. Like, what problem are you solving? Getting from A to B is the core value proposition of a car. Doing it safe is the aftermath. Making it in style to destination B is the aftermath. But it comes down to the core value proposition of a car to begin with. It has to take you from A to B. And that's what we apply to everything that we build. And that's what I've applied to everything that I've always built. Just validate it and start with a bike before you turn it into a car. Walk even if you can, just to understand the experience of going from A to B. You know, so all of that knowledge is what we continuously apply, where I give continuous trainings within our company on how to reapply that way of thinking to how we build things. Now, the good thing is that I also actually have knowledge on how to build software, so I can actually also think with my team on how it makes sense to structure certain things so that we actually do build that core value proposition within the things that we build. When it comes to building that software, though, what are some of the oversights that people make other than just understanding the A to B method. I understand that, but what other things, like, are they not bringing in a CTO, someone who looks over the technology and looks over the coding at the right time? Because I know that when I've studied software as a service brands, that one of the key things that the successful ones did was they had someone who could interrogate the code from the early days, which I think a lot of these brands don't have.
The thing is that I'm not a non-technical founder. I'm a technical founder. And the people that we're addressing with this question is the non-technical founders, because I'm actually the one, to a certain extent, can actually validate that my people do as how they should do.
So,
right?
so you are the CTO of the brand.
I'm not necessarily the CTO. We have someone else, but I do work very closely with him, and I do understand what it is that he's managing and how he's managing it. So my advice to non-technical founders is to, first of all, validate and build, depending on how complex it is, to stick with something that's close to you. Nowadays, with AI, with no code, you can really build simple tools, simple solutions that can very easily validate what it is that you do. Once you get to that point, you can actually bring someone on who you trust. And again, people watching should know my definition of trust by now, can actually help you to start building stuff and start solving that solution. Because ultimately, all you want to do is you want to feed feedback. You want to feed knowledge of, hey, as a founder, when you're running a software business, which again, I'm tapping a bit into both, all you want to do is speak to customers. All you want to do is figure out, what problem am I solving and what do people want to solve? Like, what do people want? You know, and that by like asking really good questions, that's how you get better and better and better.
Yeah. I think a lot of people think they know what people want, but they forget to ask people what they want.
They assume.
Assumption, right? It's the mother of all evil in business, but everyone's assuming that they've got the best software idea. I like, when I think about software, I like to look at what's already working in the marketplace and kind of think, right, can it be done in a cleaner way? Can there be, like, a lot of softwares put too much functionality in the product and it sometimes overkills it. A lot of people are using like a Go High Level, for example. It does everything, but it does so much. Sometimes Pipedrive would serve you better as a CRM for a lot of companies, because Go High Level does so much that you get too overwhelmed with it.
The thing is like with tools that allow you to do so much, it's kind of like the SOP death trap, where it's very easy for founders who do not have experience with applying proper systems and structure to over-engineer things and make them more complicated than they can be. So again, for like certain non-technical founders, you just don't want to like wish this up on yourself to work with something that has so much freedom.
Yeah. How are you designing your SOPs so that, you know, when you're structuring your content and when you're structuring your businesses or when you're structuring your software, how are you making it so that you do it, it's iterated once and then it can be worked on by a member of your team to iterate that SOP rather than you doing it all the time?
So currently what I'm really busy with is trying to teach the team how to do that a lot, but ultimately it just comes down to really good documentation and also explanation. So the way we do that is we were to document a process, we were to document a system, then what I would do, or whoever is in charge, would actually shoot some sort of a video to explain what it is that they do. And then the relevant team members, which often in the case is like one of the team members that kind of, you know, was either the first one of that department or whatever, has actually shot another video to explain it from their perspective so that we can see that it aligns with what we have put together. Right. And 9 out of 10 times, it's also really good to do that the other way around, because ultimately when running a business, there's 2 types of people. There's people that learn and there's people that implement. And if you have a company that is only filled with people that are learning, you're going to have a very hard time. Right. I've been there.
So you need to make sure that you're employing action takers.
I mean, at some point when you get from 0 to 1, you can do that with a lot of learners, because your knowledge can only get you so far. But once you get from 1 to 10, that's when you have to just deploy new knowledge. We have Kerry Logistics on board, which is the largest logistic company in all of Asia. We have one of our advisors on board who I'm not going to name drop, but he's sold to Uber for 1.2 billion, did majority of the warehouses for Apple. So there's no denying of the fact that I also, you know, I don't also know everything. Like there's also so many new learnings that I'm going through. Like I've spoken about during this session as well. It's my biggest thing right now is personal development, to like make sure that I can work on that and that I can even convince people that are here, that are willing to come down here and then take us here.
Yeah.
You know?
So how are you communicating that piece then? Because obviously you're talking about a guy that's done a 1.2 billion sale to Apple.
Yeah. To Uber.
To Uber. How are you positioning this to him as an opportunity that he can't miss in taking your company forward?
You and I just had a chat before this podcast where we both said that we fundamentally believe that when you give without asking back, you're always going to receive more in return.
Yeah.
I've got the craziest email hitting my inbox. Hey, $1 billion founder here. I want to help. He reached out to me. He came to me. He was like, man.
Inbound.
He was like, man, the things you're doing, how you're doing it, the way you're positioning yourself.
That all comes back to the piece when you were on the whiteboard. You understood every area of your life, how you wanted to articulate yourself online, and then you started to do that. And then because you did that from an authentic space, someone like that saw that and could resonate. Whereas if you hadn't have done that first initial step, which is why I'm reminding everyone on this conversation about that first initial step, you wouldn't have been able to curate that conversation.
And I think to just double tap on that, on like why that happened, and that's also, I think, a really beautiful insight as a founder that I've been very fortunate to unlock, is that, you know, like all the things that we think are so important only get you so far. You know, you can only wear one watch. And like my business partner always says, and I know you can tell, he eats a lot of steak. He always says, I can only eat one steak at the time.
Yeah.
I can only drive one car at the time. When you get to certain cycles within your business and when things go well and when you start to make money and you can start to take care of yourself, you can start to take care of your family, you can build your own family, you'll realize that the game we're all playing is not about money. Because the thing is, you can make as much money as you want, but money only solves money problems. Now, why am I saying this is that when you as a founder, and I'm talking about our investor, and I've never even spoken about this with him, but I know that this is the place that he moved out of, is that he recognized himself in me. He sees the fire, he sees how he is as a person, and he sees that in me. And when you get to that level, when it really doesn't matter at all anyway, like you can do anything you want, like buying anything will not give you any feeling. And I have that right now, like it doesn't matter. You will only get joy from the things that you truly, truly enjoy and that you truly feel like is your purpose and that you truly are passionate about.
Yeah.
Because him doing that is probably the biggest amount of joy that guy has ever seen in the last couple of years, by making me avoid icebergs that he has hit himself, to do even better, to not be stabbed in the back once again.
Has he ever spoken to you about the day of the exit and how he felt the day afterwards?
He did, and that's a story that should be told by himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would hazard a guess it goes something along the lines of some of the similar stories I've heard from people that have sold for that much money. I'll tell you from my experience of those founders that I've spoken to, it's like, it's an anticlimax. It's something that you spend 10 years swinging the bat, trying to hit this ball that, 1% ball, and you hit the ball and you knock it out of the ballpark and you sell for $1 billion. Yeah. And then guess what happens? The next day you're like, well, okay, now what do I do? Because retirement is the biggest myth in the world. And some of these guys are doing it by 35, 40,
Yeah.
They've got so much left to give because business is an infinite game. So I think what he's probably seen is he's like, right, who's my next, protege? Who can I help overcome these things? And that's why he stepped in to help you.
Yeah.
Because he just wants to have some purpose back in his life, because he probably lost a lot of purpose when he sold that business.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like, I mean, it's honestly, and it's so hard to like. That's why I love that I'm also documenting what it is that we do, right? Because we have so many points where we just sit down and we just look at what it is that we do, man. Because it's really stressful, but it's so much fun. Yeah. This is the part that is probably going to be the most fun part ever.
Is it important that someone who goes in the pursuit of something great in life, is it important that they enjoy it?
Depends. The first phase, it doesn't. Like, if I look at how much I've sacrificed in terms of my health, in terms of my happiness, to get the ball rolling, it doesn't matter.
So is the ball rolling between 0 to 1? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, 0 to 1. Like, start making like 10, 20,000 US a month kind of just have your own freedom, location freedom, you know, and just have time freedom. That's the first part. Once you've got to that stage, there's no way you can do something to the extent of what it takes to like build something really big and not enjoy it.
Do you have a monetary goal that you're heading towards?
No. I mean, we know our numbers very well. I mean, taking a company unicorn status, that's definitely something that I would love to do. I have no interest in taking a company public. I would want to keep everything private. Just don't think that makes sense, especially considering we're bootstrapped and we've injected, you know, like multiple 7 figures ourselves just to keep it going, and we're just growing. So there's no way to like go to the stock market, but taking a company unicorn size, that's definitely something that I would say is a bit of a goal. Yeah.
Do you think though that when you get to that point where you have done that, do you think it'll be as fulfilling as what you thought it would be, the end goal, or do you reckon you're just going to get most of the fulfillment from the journey of what it is that who you have to become together?
I would say that it would, you know, especially knowing who I am and what I find important, it would definitely be really rewarding. But I think I'm pretty aware that it's always the run up there that's gonna, you know, that's gonna be the best part.
I think the awareness piece to that though, that you've got so early on in your entrepreneurial journey, is the gift that you've been given. The awareness piece, just to be aware that the end goal isn't the goal. That's just, it's who you become on the way to go in there. Yeah. Just understanding that at a high level and fully embodying it in your actions and how you create and how you turn up into the world. That piece is super important. Yeah. Powerful. Yeah. Cuts through a lot of noise, because I imagine what it allows you to do is it allows you to say, do you know what? That's not for me. That is for me. Yeah. Is that what it allows?
Yeah, it does, because there's so many opportunities or things that I could do, even with the brand that I'm sitting on right now. And I don't flinch about any opportunity other than doing things that are really close to me, talking about things that are really close to me, showing things that I know are going to help so many people in this unfortunately fucked up world where there's a lot of voices pointing people into wrong directions, in my opinion.
If I presented you with a brand right now and I put one on the table and I said, look at this brand, and you looked at it, the numbers are good, the product's good, everything's good, or what's the difference between you doing that deal and working with that brand and not? I
mean, like us working with the brand, like on everything on China side?
Yeah, working with them or investing in it or building it yourself. What would stop you from, because there's a lot of opportunities that get presented when you start achieving stuff in life, as you've seen. There's probably your inbox, whether it be on Instagram, whether it be email, people are flowing ideas and things. We could work on this, we could work on this. How are you picking out the things that are right to work on right now and the things that aren't?
I mean, it's very simple. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that run businesses that are going to watch this. There's 1,000,001 things that you could do. There's always 5 things that you should do. Focus is everything. You cannot expect to compete with other people doing one thing extremely well. It's just unfair. Like statistically, just assuming that every single parameter that contribute to achieving that goal is equally as good, the only parameter that makes the difference is your time. So if you start saying yes to all of these different opportunities that don't necessarily contribute to the main one, the one that you've set for yourself, the one that you've committed to, it's unfair to think that you're going to beat someone who has that one main goal. Yeah, it's really simple.
It's super. And that's one thing I've noticed in this podcast game is the ones that ultimately I think will be winning over the longest time horizon are the ones that can play the infinite game for the longest amount of time and not give up, just because they're not attached to the analytics, they're not attached to the other things, and they're in it for the right reasons. They're not clip farmers.
Exactly.
I call them. You know, they're doing it from a purpose. They want to actually, they want to take an interest in the person that they're interviewing, and they want to connect, and they want to get the deep insights out of them and allow them to showcase their best self, which then allows them to be able to play that game for longer because it's taken from a genuine interest from a place.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think if you approach every brand and everything you do like that, I don't think you can go far wrong.
Yeah.
But we're getting too much now, even in the titles of like videos and stuff like that online and in your space as well, where everybody's now years ago it was the 10 million founder. Now everyone's got to 100 million. Have you noticed?
Yeah.
Everyone's doing 100 million now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, soon it'll be 200 million. It's like, when does it stop? It can't all be true, can it?
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you rely on those things to differentiate yourself, it's not, you know, like, there's so many brands doing 9 figures, you know. It's like, again, like, it always comes down to the people. So a good friend of mine, Bruno, who runs Nude Project, I had a conversation with him, and I just thought that it was such a beautiful highlight on how powerful it is to document as a founder and create as a founder. And it kind of ties into the question you're asking. It's like 100 million this, 100 million that, 100 million this, 100 million that. There's a Spanish delivery company that is worth a couple $2 billion of euros. And they have been spending significant amounts of money on PR year on year on. They ended up hopping on the podcast with the boys from Nude Project. And throughout their entire lifetime of the company, they have never, ever received so much positive feedback from the company, from all the lower levels, because they saw what kind of a person the founder was. So 100 million or a $1 million brand, ultimately, when you start to create videos, comes down to who you are as a person. You know, because the one thing that people get wrong, and that's like what I personally do not like about Dubai, people think they owe a seat at the table because they have money.
Yeah.
You owe jack shit when you just have money. Yeah. Because just because you have money doesn't mean that your voice should be heard. It's the person who you are, what you stand for, how you deal and how you treat people. That is your brand. And money is just the amplifier of all of the shit that you are as a person.
What is Dubai though for you in terms of what do you see it as a vehicle to allow a couple of months sprint of growth?
Yeah, I mean, I love Dubai because it's extremely efficient. I grew up in big cities like Hong Kong, spent loads of time in Shanghai, Guangzhou, and this is all just extremely efficient. You know, you have a maid, you have a driver, you can get anything within probably 30 minutes. It's just really optimized to like really focus on doing what you need to do and have an optimized life. I love that about Dubai. I think it's really, really created and built to just be very, very optimal and very efficient, which I really love. But I personally do just miss nature. I just really miss nature. And I also think that, you know, because of a lot of it being very money centered, I feel like there's a lot of people that just wear a mask, and that a lot of it is very transactional, and a lot of people try and hide behind their money. Yeah. You know, but that's my personal opinion, you know,
my personal opinion on this is like Dubai for me is very chapters orientated. Mm-hmm. Like, this is why I spend a lot of time in Australia. Yeah. Why I go to I'll go to like places like Port Banús for a little bit of the year in Spain, and other places like sometimes I go to Istanbul, because I need culture. I need to see like families with each other on the beach, and then the rainforest in the background. I need to see all that kind of stuff as well. You need all parts. So I think Dubai is a great place for any entrepreneurs that aspire to have a certain place to come to for a couple of chapters of a sprint, but also not to let Dubai take your soul and drag you into a vortex where you're living here 12 months a year and you get pulled into like having the Louis Vuitton man bag and all this other stuff that's you get pulled into the branding of Dubai.
Yeah, I know, and exactly, yeah.
Just that's what I see takes so many people's kind of souls.
Yeah, I agree. And again, it's like, you know, just putting up that mask, hiding behind those things, you know, because that's what people think they should do versus, I mean, my other half gave me a book, and the title is The Courage to Be Disliked.
I've read it.
And I'm only getting started, so I can't give too much context, but just the title enough says a lot, in my opinion.
So it's a Japanese book originally.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't
Japanese
know that.
book that was translated into English. You'll really enjoy it. I'll give you a couple more recommendations after the podcast.
Yeah, please.
By the same author. It's really, really powerful. I'm not going to say anything on this podcast about this book.
Yeah.
I just encourage all of you to read it, because it will transform the way that you think about life itself and how you view everything. That's all I'll say on it.
Yeah.
You know, but there's a thing for you. Your girlfriend has bought you that book. right?
Yeah.
She's bought you that book because she wants to make you better. How have you aligned yourself with the right woman in your life that you knew that you should go all in on when you've got so much opportunity and probably DMs flying in everywhere because of the brand that you've built on the internet? How did you know that she was the one specifically?
If you were to ask me what I am most proud of in life, it's the woman that I have by my side. I think in this day and age, tapping into everything that I said is important, from the trust to the values, and also someone that you can really rely on and that you choose to be with every day. That is something that, I think choosing your other half as a man is the most important thing that you can do in your life, because I wouldn't be able to find the right words to tell you how much that girl means to me and how much she has done to me or for me and contributed to who I am becoming. And she would enter a room together with me, and if I would leave that room, my name would be not only upheld, but also uplifted by the quality of woman she is. And everything that I do to this day has developed an entire new layer of purpose to understand what's on the other side of all the hard work. Because yes, I talk a lot about hustle culture, and yes, I work really hard, but I know what's on the other side. And that comes back to what we started this entire podcast with. Family is the thing that matters most to me. When I saw that girl for the first time, and I kid you not, I knew it from the second that this was the girl I was going to marry. Because I know she is someone that I would want a family with. And she understands me like no other.
So there is really a thing like love at first sight. I've heard this from numerous people. I like to ask on these podcasts about relationships because I think it's something that's not deeply touched on by a lot of other podcasts. It defines who you are as a man. It really, like, when I look at your achievements and what you're achieving out there, it all comes back down to, like, one, you observed your parents and how your dad moved with your mum and how he treated your mother, which then, okay, you thought, well, I want to mimic that in my life because of how much my dad's given to me. And then you've looked for that in your reality, and then you found this girl and you thought, right, now I can do what my dad did for my mum in my own reality and curate that life, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like you've observed and embodied and then took action on it. And that is typical of your whole entrepreneurial journey. You spend a moment observing, you work out how your values are aligned with this thing, you work out what you want and what you don't want, you align it, and then you can look for it within that reality that you're seeking and then align it with yourself because you know what you want.
Yeah.
So clear.
Yeah, I do. And I feel like when you do also know, as long as you just trust enough that things will come your way, they'll come your way. Yeah.
What whereabouts is she right now, like while you're traveling?
So she's in Indonesia right now, and I'm actually flying back to Indonesia tonight. So I'm just basing myself out of there right now. But she's all over the world as well. Like she's a killer. Yeah. Is
she in business herself as well?
Yeah.
How is it a guy in business dating another woman in business? How is that working out? Because a lot of this, a lot of the red pill community are now saying like some of them are saying you got to have 4 girlfriends, which I don't agree with. Some of them are saying you can't have a girlfriend that earns more than you. You can't have a girlfriend that's in business because that's masculine trait.
Yeah.
Like, what's your thesis on all of that? Because a lot, as a young man yourself, that I feel is successful and embodying this, I want other men listening to this to really have a full framework that you've got and your perspective on this.
I think it's really relevant. I do agree to some extent that certain people just shouldn't be having a partner that's also in business, But I, in all honesty, think that it also, for especially a lot of guys, as a hard pill to swallow, having a successful woman, just to be honest with you, my girl doesn't need me in any form or shape, to be honest. She's got her thing down, man. She's killing it. She's got her own places. She's got a crazy real estate portfolio. She's got a thriving business. Like, she could raise a child by herself. Like, honestly. To a lot of men, this is very intimidating. And I know a lot of guys that have seen a lot of success that would date someone that they know they're always going to be in control of. Because when shit hits the fan, or when they do something, which often comes out of a place of insecurity, like not allowing her to go out or whatever, it's your own fault. the fact that you're with someone who you do not trust to go out or have a night of fun with or dress appropriate or inappropriate, you know, that it's relative to what you value. But often there's obviously a baseline of dressing in a certain way, having a certain amount of fun, being acceptable, being normal, being really normal things in life, you know? So my perspective on that is that you have to do something that makes sense for you. I live a life that is so extraordinary, and I know that I'm here to leave an impact. I would need someone to understand that, because otherwise you're going to be consumed in my world. You're not going to understand it. You're not going to find balance. And most importantly, I'm not going to find balance. Because if there's one thing that keeps me going right now and that keeps me with both feet on my ground, it's her. Because she understands me. And that comes down to the whole freaking conversation that we've had. It comes down to being heard, to being understood. Because ultimately, all we do in this life is deal with people.
Yeah. And you were probably the first man that she ever felt could understand what she was going through as an entrepreneurial woman, because you were like, okay, I'm not going to try and fix your problems, but I'm going to hear what you're saying.
Yeah, but like even on her side, and that's like something, again, it's not for me to speak about those things, but she's gone through a lot as well. And when I look at how strong she of a person is, and also why she's doing what she's doing, because she had to fight her whole life, you know, like I have no more respect for anyone than I have for that woman. And I want nothing more in life to redo this whole thing with her over again and do everything right that was done wrong to her.
And from day one, I imagine you looked at her like she was going to be the mother of your children from day one.
I called my mom on the way back. I was driving in Hong Kong. I'll never forget it. Through the, I think it's North Tunnel, and like from Shangwan all the way to like Causeway Bay. And I'm driving through this tunnel, and I've had one of my closest friends who also works with me, Wojtek, sitting next to me. And I called my mom. I was like, Mom, I met the one. I just knew. And it's not necessarily because she's perfect, because in truth, she's not. And neither am I. But it goes back to what we spoke about. It's the loyalty. I have never in my entire life loved someone so much. Love's going to fade. Looks are going to fade. But one thing that I do know will never ever fade, and that applies to every relationship that I have, from personal to business, is the loyalty. The choice of me waking up and choosing that person and choosing to make it work. Because it's ride or die, especially with the shit that I have going on, you know, and like how big I want to kick it.
And that choice happens every day that you wake up.
Every day, man. Every day. When I sit on this balcony at 5 a.m., I write down the shit that I'm grateful for. There's not been a single day where I don't write down her name, because she's the backbone and also just like helping me out, keeping my nose in the right direction, and make sure that I start to lead a company with hundreds of people.
What's one of the things that she's called you out on in the last year that really allowed you to see something from a totally different perspective?
Talking way too much about myself, man. Pretty ironic, eh? That during a podcast.
Here we are. Here we are. Yeah, she's listening to this right now. No, yeah. I like that, because one of the key things that I look for in a woman is someone that gives unconditional love, unconditional support, but really like pushes you to be the best version of yourself as a man, and allows you to, you know, be fully embody who you are, you know, without the judgment. You know, yeah, I might have got this thing wrong over here, but she can see from the intent of your heart that you're just trying to learn and be the best man that you can be, because ultimately what you're trying to do is provide the lifestyle that you think that she deserves.
Exactly, you know, and I think, you know, like just knowing that there's going to be a lot of people listening and having like a certain image of how it should be, and to be fully open with you, dude, like I've seen it all. I have lived, like, I'm only 27, but dude, I feel like I've lived 3 lives. You know, I've had, you know, everything you can think of, everything that
a full career.
Yeah. Like I've, you know, like I've had my fair fun and share and everything, you know, and it's like,
I've had a career too, brother.
Yeah. You know,
I get it. I understand, but the career gets old. The career gets old.
It has no longevity. And especially doing what we're doing, you start, like, it just starts losing meaning. Like, I would respectfully, and I'm very fortunate that I don't have to, but that shows me the level of commitment and also importance of the relationship that I have with my other half, knowing that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with her, that I would hypothetically trade in everything I have right now just to be with her, because I know that is the one thing that I can not buy, that I cannot achieve, that I cannot, earn, because it all comes down to who I am as a person, not the things that I do, not the way that I look, not the way I treat people, the way I am as a person.
The most beautiful things in this life are the things that can't be paid for in cash.
Yep.
That is it. And what you're talking about, love, support, understanding, vision. You can't buy all those things. So this is why when I see a lot of people wearing all these brands, what are brands? They're an identity that are further away from you. Your whole goal on this planet and whole point in life is to spend your days getting closer and closer and closer to who the fuck that you are, and understanding that version of self and getting in the polarity of that.
Yeah.
What most people are doing in this realm that I see is putting external labels on themselves, whether it be brands, whether it be this, whether it be that, to show that the world that they're worth something, when they could just go and meditate and understand that they're worth something within inside themselves anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it's what they say, right? It's like the guys who talk the loudest have the smallest.
Yeah.
You see, it's like and again, like referring back to that famous Chinese proverb, it's like the smartest people in the room are the ones that listen.
Yeah.
Because when you really are who you are, you don't even have to explain. Like we were speaking about this, like, should I introduce you? It's like, I don't feel the need to introduce myself.
Yeah.
Because I know who I am. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm capable of.
I knew that I needed to get this conversation with you because I knew that it would be a powerful conversation that I feel like if anyone else did it, it would offend me, because I feel like they'd be talking about this tactic and this and scale that, but they're missing all the nuance of why you've achieved what you've achieved, which is what I'm trying to showcase in this conversation to everyone watching this. Is like, there's a lot more to this than just, trying to hit this revenue number or trying to do this or trying to create that bit of packaging over there. Like, there's more to it than that. There's more substance. There's more nuance. Don't miss that. The key insights that you gave on understanding on the whiteboard at the most granular level what your values are and what pieces of your life you should be showing to the world, and showing all pieces of yourself, so that when you put that brand out there, that is congruent with who you are. So you're not a mask. That's that stuff. If you really pick up on this conversation, that stuff, and just take that away from this, it should shift your whole reality.
I've said this a few times in some of my videos, and I literally do it as how I'm about to do it right now. Like, everyone here with me right now has, like, those that really listen to what we're discussing. You are so fortunate that you have access to internet, that you have access to this knowledge, and take that. And I always say I would love, and that's like a big thing for me, I would love to inspire people, but inspire doesn't mean shit. I want to inspire to the extent where inspiration turns into action. And when you start taking action and using this knowledge, you can actually create a life that, again, taking it all the way back to like what to me everything is about. There was this like doctor that once released a statement on what people talk about and what they find important when they breathe out their last breath. Thousands of people. No one has ever spoken about their possessions. No one has ever spoken about the agreements. No one has ever spoken about their achievements. All they cared about was the people that were around them. And by you listening to the things that you and I are discussing right now, and actually taking that knowledge and actually building a life that you're proud of, and it doesn't have to be flashy, it doesn't have to be big, it has to be something that you can look back on at the end of the ride, saying that you've had fun. Say that you've enjoyed every single bit of that time that you've been given. That's how I look what I'm doing right now. Like, I know that the partner that I'm with right now, and not only my life partner, but also my business partner, everyone involved, man, we're going to look back at this life and be like, fucking hell, dude, we had a blast. Can you believe this? That this was what we've done in this, may it be 80, 90 years that we was given? And like, jumped in all of these opportunities, from like the market timing to this stuff happening, to exploring the world, to breaking language barriers in ways that no one has ever been done before. the Caucasian speaking, the Chinese speaking Caucasian dude. Yeah. Like, it's like all these things like, man, you know, like I'm building on this, I'm like sculpting this actual statue, and I'm so proud of it, and I'm still going, and I'm not even like 10% there, you know, and that comes all down to the context of the things that we've discussed during this conversation.
Well, there's infinite energy when you come from this place.
There is.
So you don't run out of battery, because you're literally like, you're embodying everything that you are. You're walking into rooms that you want to actually be in. You're operating in areas you want to actually operate in. And you're creating content that actually resonates with you, like that you wanted for your younger self. So everything, the whole circle of life, as you put it, is all in tune, because then you can, okay, cool. Now I can go for a 14-hour day. How can people go for a 14-hour day if they don't really, they're like, oh, you know, this isn't for me. This part of my life is shit.
Exactly. But that's also like balanced out with a certain amount of pain, because when you do look at, for example, a lot of successful founding stories or whatever, or like even a lot of successful in terms of monetary success, a lot also comes out of pain, you know. So sometimes the pain is so much that it almost just allows you to turn a blind eye to not doing things that don't make you happy. But the thing that I've seen a lot when that happens is then people who go through that and want to do and make and become successful, be acknowledged, be recognized on the street, or whatever it may be, being really successful, being seen driving around a nice car, whatever, they'll hit a wall as well, because they'll realize that the pain that initially started them to do all of those things is not going to be gone when they have it. You know, so that's why I also talk about this so much in my content. Like, I have massive goals. Like, I am, you know, like I know that I'm going to leave an impact on this entire generation. But it's not as if I'm like extremely fixated or like unhealthy amount of obsession around these things. I still understand what's important. And I still understand that, you know, me taking a Tuesday evening off to be present, to put my phone down and really be there with my girl is something that like is worth more than any of the other stuff that, you know, you're doing. And that doesn't mean that the other stuff is not valuable, but it's like it put things in perspective, because without those things, you know, like, what are we doing it for?
Well, you're out of alignment if you don't, because one of your values is the woman in your life. One of the biggest gratitude things in the journal is the woman, right? Yeah. So if she wasn't given that solid time, that hour a day where you sit down and you just be, if she wasn't given that, then she wouldn't be at the top of your value list.
Exactly. And like, I feel like, and this is something that only recently I started to realize, because if you really think about it, there's one extreme, which is just like really, really putting in the work and building this massive empire, selling the whole thing, being the guy, doing it all. And once you have all of that, what's on the flip side? Going up the mountains and do nothing else but meditate? Like, there's no flip side. Like, there's no balance. And the contrast of these extremes is 180 degrees. So, and again, this is something that I've realized, where you go through these cycles and there's a right time for you to start understanding that you start to work on this. Because I haven't had this until a year ago, where I really realized this and where I really started to like work on this and understand that now I'm entering this phase. Before that, it was just sending it. Yeah. Don't think, just do. You know, but now it's like the foundation set. We've got something beautiful in the pipeline. Like, we've been dealt a hand of cards where the stars have aligned. Market opportunity is there. Market timing is there. The skills and knowledge that have been built up over a decade worth of blood, sweat, and tears are all there to actually capitalize on this opportunity. And there's no one better between me and the people that stand in my corner to do what we're doing.
How has Vince, as a partner, and what he's brought to the table helped you? Because obviously he's probably filling in gaps that you have in your arsenal, and you're probably filling in gaps that he has in his arsenal. And how did you two both come together and work together?
Him and I are like yin yang, because I understand his pain points and I can solve them, and he can explain his actual pain points in order for me to solve them even better, right? Wow. So him and I being on the same team is essentially just bringing two different types of expertise into a solution that comes out of a very deep pain that existed within his companies that are solved by a solution that I have the answers with, and that is sprinkled with the exact knowledge on how this, first of all, needs to be perceived, how this needs to feel, and how this has to make sense for an e-com brand owner.
Yeah.
And that's like...
So it's connecting dots that previously people who would try and solve that problem would always be looking at it from, okay, I'm trying to solve the problem, but not be able to really understand the person on the other end of the problem here.
Yeah.
Not just so much the customer, but the brand owner that has to deal with all the other obstacles in the way of getting that customer to have a good experience, right?
Exactly, yeah. And it's because of his understanding of him going through that pain, you know, like punching his screen, I don't know how many times, so like dealing with those things which are now solved and making those that can really relate to this problem obviously feel like things are under control, which they are.
But when it comes to finding a co-founder, someone to work with, a ride or die business partner, how did you two go about knowing that this was the right match?
It is extremely hard. And it's, again, like, I think, again, the most important thing is, and I'm pretty sure that both Vince and I, as business partners, can relate to this, that there's often a handful of times that we don't really like that we do or how we do it. And that's okay, you know, like we're ultimately still different people, but we know who we are as people. And I think the core fundament of this relationship is loyalty. I know that this guy would take a bullet for me, and he knows that I would take a bullet for him. And that results in an environment where you choose to tackle stuff, no matter how hard to get. I choose to have him as a business partner, knowing that the obstacles that he may not be ready for, and that may apply to me as well. But I choose and I trust him to grow and tackle those, and we can potentially even tackle them together. Yeah. And that comes with a lot of really hard, tough conversations. Yeah. I mean, we've had like a few the other day, you know, where it's like constantly us like not trying to raise our voice, constantly like trying not to get angry and look at it from, you know, like, I mean, we're dudes. You're dealing with fucking ego, you know. It's like we're constantly trying to like observe what we do, how we do. Is this best for the business? Like, and like a perfect example, we spoke about this. Both Vince and I have been seated in a room majority of our lives, just getting shit done and dealing with people online, just scaling whatever it is that we were scaling. We are not necessarily always the best people. You know, so there's been moments where team members didn't feel heard. And that was like a hard realization, but it's a good one, and you make it together and you talk about it. And I choose a partner that I know is gonna, because if there was ever gonna be an argument, or if there's ever gonna be a finger raised or a finger pointed, or like an unnecessary amount of anger towards that feedback, knowing that we both want this to succeed, shows that he's not a good business partner. And I'm very fortunate that day has not come yet, and I don't think it will come. And that to me defines a quality partnership, where you choose that no matter the challenges that come your way, you will trust that you will grow and that you will face them together, if not alone. Because ultimately it also comes down to divide and conquer, right? So I trust him to grow, put everything aside from ego to how he thinks things should work, how I think should work, and like figure shit out, and trust that he's going to figure out how I would do it, or probably even better.
Did it start with an honest conversation of understanding what you both, you know, your core values on what you both value, but also understanding what you're both best at within the business?
It's still an ongoing process. And especially when you run the business that we're running, like the growth is crazy. Like it is an obscene amount of growth. And when you grow so fast, you know, like it's just constant blushing of fires. Like it's constant just putting out fires. And sometimes, you know, like we are forced to have one conversation like that because things just don't flow as smooth. And that's okay too, because that, I feel like also with what's happening with the market timing and everything, is also just part of the process. Like you don't always have to like force and have a conversation like, hey dude, what are your values? No, like the way we deal with things, the way we move, the way we interact with our team members, the things we do also shows a lot of the values and how someone is, you know. And like, yeah, when there's things that bother us, like we try and talk about them, and that's like a gradual process that you just develop and get better at as well, because that's also something that's probably the hardest thing. Again, comes down to dealing with people.
Well, it's hard as well because you boys are uniquely creating something in a space that hasn't traditionally been done that way. So you're both, even though you both understand each other's skills, there's obstacles and things that you're running through and running towards right now that perhaps neither of you have experienced, or, you know, you don't know who's better at overcoming this right now. And that can involve the ego piece because, you know, maybe Vince thinks, oh, you know, I can tackle this. And you're like, no, I'm better at this piece. You do that piece. And it's like, then you have to crush that little bit of ego there because you've both never really come across this one point that we're talking about.
100%. So that's, again, like choosing to also be with a business partner that can look at those things objectively. Like, okay, you know, like even if someone may be better, it's like, there's also like a very important parameter to consider here is that just because someone could do it better doesn't mean that they actually will do it better. And I'll tell you why. Because if I look at both Vince and my schedule, we're always very busy. So potentially someone who's a little less good but with way more time can do a much better job. You know, so it's always just like really figuring out and finding the balance there. And again, just having the hard, tough conversations to just be better, you know, to just be a better person.
And how have you balanced it across jurisdictions? Because obviously he's in Dubai, you're out in China most of the time.
So the way we do it is we have our main holding structure and parent company in Hong Kong. You've got a WFOE, which is a wholly foreign overseas enterprise or something. A foreign wholly owned overseas enterprise where you use the Hong Kong company to open a subsidiary company in China, which is also allowing really good cash flow between those two companies because I've seen people sell companies in China and basically having the money stuck in China. So I've learned that lesson through someone else. And that's kind of like how the entire structure is set up. We do also have a US LLC, which is mainly for like agreements and all of those things. But I'm based in Asia. Vince is based in Dubai. And that's like kind of like what the whole structure looks like. Yeah.
Do you also have a Dubai company as well?
I am a personal resident here in Dubai, but I have been actively also investing in actually a handful of things that really stand close to me and that resonate with me. One of them is actually Jamie, who's sitting here with me. He runs a company called Cinegrams, which is essentially just allowing creators to color grade really nice. So everyone watching this, like that's how I do my color grading, as well as the effects, is just allowing anyone to like get a really high quality of output at extreme low effort. So after speaking to him, we also established a partnership. So there's like a handful of entities that I own equity in Dubai as well. And that's like one of the companies that I own skin in the game in Dubai. Yeah.
How do you though pick between, you know, when it comes to this attention piece that we talked about earlier on in this conversation, how do you pick, okay, let's invest in Jamie because that's not going to take away from my apex predator here? How do you define that working relationship?
So it's very simple. When you as a person are working on something, and like even this glass of water is a really good example. Saying that, I might as well just take a sip.
Yeah, have a sip. Have a sip. Yeah, have a sip. We've been, I don't know how long we've been talking, but we've been going a while.
So this glass of water is essentially opportunity. The only time that you are allowed to touch another glass of water is when this one overfills. Now, when I say that is with what I'm doing with YouTube and the impact that I'm having on founders, documenting the journey, building their brand, essentially creating a culture around who they are, which comes with many benefits. This is so in line with what I'm doing, and it's no extra effort for me to just talk about that. That's what I'm using. So it is already happening. It's already something that I'm doing. I'm not changing anything. It's contributing to the main goal, which is building my personal brand, which obviously accelerate all of the companies that I have. And I'm essentially just really strategic about incorporating this into the company so that that company can grow by me just simply talking about that I use that company, because they have contributed a lot to the efficiency and the speed of me pumping out these really high quality pieces of content. You know, so it was a no-brainer to start talking about him. And then from a actual, you know, involvement perspective, other than the exposure that it brings, may it be mentioning it on this podcast or being with us, the amount of things that he learns as well by observing us from like the sidelines, and him actually also helping me out with shooting content is already like allowing him to grow so much as well, right? So it's and I've had this conversation with a lot of people, and I always tell them, when when we're sitting at it's always like a table. I don't know what it is, but like always sitting at a table. We're always sitting across each other. There's been a handful of times where, and I've had this conversation with someone once too. There's always a time where you just sit with someone at this table and you're going to tell them like, listen, I guarantee you are going to be sitting on the other side on the table one day where you find someone who you really resonate with, who you really understand, who you really can see is going down a similar path, and you're going to help them. And that conversation is going to come. And when that day comes, you'll think back of this exact moment that we're having here right now.
Yeah. Just when you're saying that, I'm thinking about one of the conversations that changed my life. I had a boxing gym in Australia at the time, and there's a guy called James Gray that walks into my boxing gym, and I thought that I was training him to lose weight. But what was happening when those exchanges, yes, I was helping him lose weight, and yes, I was helping him become better physically, but he was sharpening up my mind, getting me to read books, getting me to communicate in a better tone, getting me to understand sales. And the reason I'm sat here today and being able to interview you is because of that conversation. And there's pivotal conversations that happen in all of our lives where someone has given to us selflessly and allowed us to see more of ourselves than we would ever normally be able to see, because we think we are in this box, but they expand our vision.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I also really try and show people through my content, is that you can only think as far as you allow yourself. Because if you don't, like, beautiful example, it's actually a funny story. I'll give you the full context. First day that I met my girlfriend, she was super enthusiastic, and she was like, yeah, I've got this like Mongolia trip planned. Do you want to come? So I was like, yes. And like when the time arrived, I was like, fuck, I'm going to Mongolia. After like 3 weeks of China, I was really sick, lost a lot of weight, but we went to Mongolia. Ended up being one of the most beautiful trips that I have ever done. And I'll tell you what my key takeaway, what my key learning was of just going there, and aside having like a really nice time off, fully disconnected, and obviously gaining another beautiful perspective of life. The people that I met there and the things that I've seen there really showed me that, and it reminded me of, you know, a fancy watch, a nice car. No one that I've met there would ever, in no form or shape, trade in a horse or an eagle for any of those things that we all find so important. None of it. Because the horse gives them travel. The horse gives them shelter. The eagle allows them to hunt. The eagle protects them. And they can only value those things because they don't even know all these other things exist. And that just shows the concept. And that's like what we spoke about earlier as well, is that comparison is just essentially poisoning your brain, because everyone's always comparing themselves to all of these other peoples with complete different stories, complete different parameters, complete different circumstances, complete different locations, and then think that it's reasonable to compare themselves to that person while they have a complete different story, while they know different things, while they've seen different things. It's like, it doesn't make sense. And that's why I also, like, this is something that I talk about so much. It's like, you can only go as far as what you know, and like what majority of our generation is bombarded with is that, like, all of that fancy stuff and all of that, and like being with a lot of women or whatever, is like, is important. And or even like what you should be, or even that you should be an entrepreneur. Like, even people that look at me like, no, like, there's people in my company that are extremely content and extremely happy, and they work a full-time job and they have beautiful lives. And every now and then I look at them and I was like, man, I wish I could switch, you know? It's not saying that I don't enjoy or I'm not grateful for what I'm doing, but I'm just saying that, like, the perspective that we have on all of the other things that everyone does around us, it just simply doesn't make sense to compare yourself to it, because you're essentially just expanding your circle of certain achievements, certain things that are important, which you are for yourself to decide if you actually find that important.
Yeah. You got to allow yourself to define what is important to you and be able to go after what you define as important, essentially. Like, stop trying to make things that are other people's apex North Star goals your goals. Stop. Yeah. You know, this is what happens in these places like Dubai, is that, you know, matey boy down the road buys a Ferrari, so next door neighbor has to have a Ferrari too, and it's like one up in each other. Whereas sometimes it's a case of like, if you just sat there and thought about it for a minute and thought, you know what, do you even need a car? Like, do you want a Rolls Royce with the driver instead, or do you even need a car at all?
Yeah.
Like, it's these honest conversations that you have to have with yourself that kind of unlock all these doors that you're speaking of. If, like, a lot of people that are listening to this probably think that they want to be entrepreneurs if they're not already, right? Potentially this conversation has a lot of these people listening. How can someone define whether they should A, be the entrepreneur, or B, align themselves with someone like you that can facilitate their growth, but they be a cog in the machine at a larger level and take some upside from that?
I think you can pretty naturally know, especially when you try a lot, if you're a leader or not. I think people can really learn that by just simply doing. And I've always said this, is that ultimately being the number 2 is a really good position.
Yeah.
Because being the number 1 is so hard. And potentially number 2 can become number 1. Like, I mean, it's my ultimate goal to pass on the torch to all of those that are around me right now.
Yeah.
You know, like to all of the talent that works with me and that gives themselves to what we're doing together. You know, but position 2 is really not bad. Like, it's really something that you should consider. Like, I also think that, again, getting back to comparison, I don't think anyone should really compare themselves to me, because what I've gone through and how much I've done and how much I've sacrificed. I mean, I pretty much spent all of my childhood just being lonely and not understanding why I didn't fit in, and having little to no friends, and then figuring out how to solve problems and make money with it, and then still not feeling understood, and getting to this point where I sacrificed so much that, like, the only thing that I feel like makes sense for me, having done all of that, is just to give back, to inspire, and make sure that people can find that happiness and build something, again, like we've spoken about this earlier, that they can just like look back at a beautiful life, which they're content with, which they're happy with, you know. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be an entrepreneur whatsoever. I just think that comes down to freedom, and freedom can also be created by being number 2 or being number 3. You know, I just think that you should strive for that freedom, not necessarily entrepreneurship, because I know that every single entrepreneur does it for their freedom.
Yeah. I think it has to be the North Star for everyone. I think any entrepreneur that just does it for money isn't going to stay in the game long, or they're going to end up compromising their reputation because it's all just a cash play. The entrepreneurs that really transcend what they're doing, that really, the ultimate, like Elon. You're not telling me Elon. Yeah. Elon, there's not one day that Elon gets up and thinks about money. He thinks about, how can I make the world a better place on a deeper level? You know, that's what he's thinking about. And I think that's what you're thinking about with what you're trying to do. It's like, okay, I've got an opportunity here to revolutionize a market, to go into what is essentially a blue ocean, connecting the great people of China and the manufacturing that's available there with these e-commerce brands and, you know, people like that need to enjoy a better experience for their customers. And you can bridge that gap by essentially what you're doing. Essentially, is you're a communication company. Because people think you're like manufacturing. You're a communication company at the end of the day. Like, you are to like the e-com and manufacturing space what Facebook is to social media. Like, essentially, at the highest of levels. You're just streamlining the communication and streamlining the customer experience.
I mean, the ultimate. I mean, there is a big physical powerhouse behind it, but in conceptual, yes. And like, we even go to extents of thinking about, okay, how can we almost like franchise what it is that we do and turn other big production hubs into centralized supply chains. Think of Vietnam. You know, like, our concept can be built in Vietnam. You know, so it almost
Philippines as well,
like big production hubs, Colombia, whatever. Like, there's lots of opportunity, and that's still very far away, but yeah. So
that's the future roadmap for you, is how to take the systems and the processes you develop in China now and implement that into other zones where you know, you can connect their manufacturing at a better level to the businesses, and then possibly the end consumer as well.
Potentially, yeah. Because it just makes so much sense. Like, if we see what it does for our customers, it's just makes sense.
And people can't get any faster first mover advantage than you, because the systems and the lessons that you've learned through building this in China will stand the test of time and allow you to enter any other market at pace.
And also, we just have so much knowledge on, you know, my business partner's side on like what brands actually need. Yeah. You know, like and I can say that with 100% confidence. Like there's no one out there that does what we do that understands brands better.
What are the common questions that your audience ask you that they want a defined answer on that I haven't asked you on this podcast?
A lot of, I don't know. A lot of people ask me where I get my glasses.
Hey, go on then.
It's like literally the most asked question.
Go on.
Yeah, so we're actually gonna we will drop this brand, but we're essentially just turning into a case study as well to show people how we do it, and also running it through all of our infrastructure.
Do these glasses work with bald people?
They do, man. They look good on you. I just saw them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, so my dad is big on glasses. That's also where it came from. He always wears, like, my dad's like this huge Dutch guy, and he always wears these like really red glasses or like really blue. And my dad always used to say, people don't remember your face, people remember your glasses. So that's also going to be the slogan of the brand. And we're gonna, but that's like one of the most questions. Other than that, I think, a lot of people, which I think is also a nice stepping stone into, you know, like the benefits of a personal brand. Like a lot of people ask me if they can work with me. Yeah. And we've gotten, because of me building my brand, we've massively, like, we have such a beautiful company culture. Like we have, and we was driving to this restaurant the other day and it was crazy traffic and I was just going through my messages and I realized that one of the company members that I don't necessarily know too well, but they have my number somehow. I don't even know how they got my number, but they always send me messages after watching my videos, and they were like, "Man, like I'm so pumped this week. Like I can't believe I'm part of this company, and like how you guys are doing this and this and that." And that's like one of the benefits that I've seen a lot with like building the personal brand that I'm currently building. It's like incredible influence on company culture. Infinite amounts of talent that wants to work with you. Infinite amounts of inbound. And also just like lots of opportunities coming your way, you know.
I think a lot of this will lead to a lot of venture capital plays and a lot of investment plays for you as well, further down the track. But to give people an even deeper insight to this, because I want to make it contextual to this podcast. Obviously, you've had a lot of podcasts. There's a lot of people in this podcast game reach out to you to obviously want to do this podcast right now. Well, that's obvious. What made you specifically choose this podcast to come on over the others? And what was it that I allowed to showcase you that made you want to do my podcast over other people's? Because I think this could really help people who are trying to cut through noise.
Ask the right questions. Like, ask from a genuine place, knowing what to ask to get the best out of me. And I could tell by just like looking at some of your stuff that's the place you're coming from, you know. Like it's especially as a podcaster, right? It's your goal to get the best story out of the podcast, out of the guests that you're bringing in as a host. And I think a lot of, again, like same principle, like, you know, like who are you as a guy? You know, what do you find important? Like even the message that you send me is like, this stuff is art. I want to get you in the podcasting game, and you've been so consistent. You know, it's like, it's those things that really reflect that what it is that you do is also something that you really love. Yeah. You know, and I know that I have a story that's to be told, and there's so much more to come, and there's so much that I haven't even talked about during this podcast. Yeah. But there's so much that I would want to share, and I know would want to share, but I wouldn't want to share it with someone that, first of all, I don't align with. And that also would steer me into the wrong direction by not asking the right questions, or like digging even deeper, and, you know, not being afraid to get a little personal. You know, I mean, we've spoken about, you know, a lot of things that stand very close to me, family, relationship. You know, I wouldn't just want to like throw that out there. Yeah. I want to make sure that someone guides me to getting the most valuable lessons out of those things, those experiences, those things that are very close to me, and why they're so close to me. You know, so that's something that even this conversation has really proven. You know, you've done that.
Yeah, I wanted to allow you to connect on an even deeper, long form connection to this audience that you've curated from your brand. You know, because I feel like they deserve to hear you talk in depth about, you know, the family, You know,
Yeah.
these key, you know, the woman in your life, because people are expecting when you come on a podcast like this for just you to talk about business and money and success and all that stuff, and all that stuff has its place within this conversation. But if you look at the key cornerstones of this conversation and what's kind of resonated with me for you, it's like you understood who you are, you understood your values, you understand how your mum and dad treated each other, and you want to bring that into your own relationship, and then you want to bring it into your own life, and then that all corresponds to how you work with Vince and how you work within your business and the values that you show the people that you employ in the business. Mm-hmm. And it's been able to synthesize that and being able to bring that to your audience. That's what I wanted to do. And that's why I said to you, I don't know if you remember me saying this to you, but I said it would kill my soul if someone else had you on a podcast and was just talking about like revenue numbers and this and that and all these other bullshit questions that I think, yes, they have their place, but they're not going to help someone move them to the level that I want to move this audience to, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it makes complete sense. And for those that have listened to this conversation, you know, like taking a business to the next level for me right now, and just like, it doesn't even matter. The numbers are like irrelevant. Like if you know, you know, like if you look at who we work with, what we do, and the size of things we do, like I don't even have to explain it. But for me, the biggest growth right now is more personal than it is business-wise. Because the truth is, when it really comes down to it, we actually all know what we have to do. Yeah. It's just how you do it. And how you do it comes down to who you are as a person.
Who are some of the entrepreneurs in the space at the moment that are really like stepping out of themselves with what they're doing as well, that are kind of really... that you could take some form of inspiration? You might not consume all their content, because I know you don't consume a lot of content, but you just see on the peripherals, you're like, do you know what? There's a man that knows who he is, or a woman that knows who she is, and they're really stepping up their game, and they inspire me a little bit.
I mean, I think just and again, like I, in all honesty, like I rarely consume. Like I rarely consume. I'd say like the only thing that I, from like a very zoomed out, far away perspective, is the size of thinking of someone like Elon Musk. I admire that. I don't think it's relevant to me. I don't think on that scale. I don't think I'll ever get to thinking on that scale to like take our civilization to another planet. Like you need to think really big to do that. I have a lot of admiration for that. I've read his book as well. Other than that, I really try and stay close to me. Like I really try and stay close to myself.
And I want people to really take that away from this conversation too, that, you know, choosing to sit with self is a powerful thing, because not many people can sit in a room alone and just sit with themselves and really ask themselves, you know, who am I right now? Is it even aligned with me? Am I even in the pursuit of the right direction? You know, do I want this for myself? What do I want for my family? You know, and when you start to understand that at a real deeper level, you can really unlock some doors that perhaps other people never dreamed you could unlock, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's so powerful. I want to give you a moment on the floor here to really articulate any ideas and anything that any message that you want to get out to the world that I've not given you the opportunity to do, because I didn't want to end this podcast. I've got an end question I'm going to ask you after this, but I really want to give you the floor to kind of articulate any ideas that I've perhaps not pulled out of you, because I want to give you that opportunity.
Everything anyone's building is never going to be worth more than the people around you, as in like family. One thing that I, you know, like would want to share, and it's something that it's not bugging me. I've found peace with it. But again, you know, like I've spoken about sacrificing a lot of things, being away, essentially just working during my childhood. Like I barely partied ever. I barely drank. I've had a big professional sports career that also like forced me to sacrifice a lot of stuff, and then eventually moved overseas. My grandpa ended up taking his own life about a year ago, and that just really put things in perspective for me, because when I looked at my phone and my mom called me, and I was literally in a business meeting, and I had to pause the meeting, and my mom was just like bawling her eyes out and like telling me that grandpa took his own life. And I've had a very small circle in terms of families, because I've told you about my dad's side, and that was my mom's side. And because my parents were both very busy, my grandparents were always at home. So they were like, like this, really close to me. I wish I, especially in the early stages, would have just taken moments, not even do less of what I was doing, but just taken the moments to pick up the phone and not be distracted and be there. Even if it was going to be the same conversation over and over again, like, hey, how's it going in China? Like I told him 1,000 times I was going in China, but I wish I could have told him 1,000 times more. Don't lose yourself in what it is that you're building to turn a blind eye to what's really important.
What do you think was the thing that led to your grandfather taking that action in his life?
Loneliness. My grandma and grandpa, they've been married for 60 years. My grandma left us about 3 years ago, and no one could fill that. No one could fill that void. And knowing how I feel about my partner right now, I would honestly not know how to cope with her not being around. So in some form or shape, and especially when being really old and having had a beautiful life, in some form or shape, I've been really angry. And I spoke at a speech, and I was a speech at his funeral, and I was like, fuck, man, like I wish you were here so I could just, give you shit, because you had so many people that cared so much about you. But I understand that when you find your life partner, and this is like, for everyone watching, you can Google the statistics of who you spend your most time with throughout the cycles of your life. And there's like a few. You've got your parents, there's like family, you've got co-workers, you've got life partners and siblings. And then some, like, I think those are the main ones. And you can see that family and all of that starts extremely high. And that kind of just like goes down and down and down towards mid of your life. And then all of a sudden your life partner is the one that you end up spending all of your time with. Everything. The good, the bad, and whatsoever. So considering that intensity at, an age where you're very aware, where you're very emotionally conscious of attachment and all of that, because in the first stages of growing up, obviously you don't realize how good you have it when you're with your family. You create that attachment with your partner. So again, coming out of perspective right now, where I know how much my partner means to me and how much she's going to mean to me in this lifetime, my grandpa losing her must have felt like he lost both of his legs.
Yeah. So what you've gained is an understanding of, even though it wasn't what you'd envisage any part of your family doing to themselves, it's like you can understand, for him, it was like his only choice that he had left.
Yeah, it was, and I'll turn this question right back at you. What do you think the choice was?
So the choice was live with the pain of not seeing the woman that you unconditionally loved for the rest of your days, or taking his own life and joining her. That was the choice.
Goosebumps. It was. And I said it during the speech, and I can even say it now, that if there may be something bigger than us, then I know they're watching. Because if there's one thing that I have known, is that they were so proud. They could not shut up about their grandchildren.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. This is. I'm glad I gave you the floor on that to allow you to articulate that, because that will move a lot of people. That will. It's moved me a lot. That's moved me a lot. I'm getting tears in my eyes just thinking about it. Like, because you can never ever understand the pain that someone else is going through. On the way to this podcast today, to film this podcast, making me cry just thinking about it. I got told that one of the guests of this show has taken his life. Has been through that himself and died. just like literally probably about 8-9 hours. His name's Jackson. And here's a guy that walked into every room, looked as if he was happy and joyful in every moment, but was obviously dealing with and going through demons and going through shit that not everyone can understand, you know? And to feel how I felt on the way to this podcast, knowing that, you know, he would want me to send this conversation to new levels, because I looked at the last message he on the way here. I was looking at, before I got in the car with Eros, I was looking at the last message he sent me, and it was from 2 podcasts ago, and he's like, brother, that was great conversation, this and the other. Now, here's a guy that's been supporting me through this journey for 200 odd episodes, you know, turn up. So I just want all of us to understand, and when you listen to this conversation, it's like, you can never, ever, ever know what someone's going through. You can never able to fully understand it, fully articulate it. And, you know, I really hope this makes every single one of you that's listening to this, if there's one thing I want you to do on this podcast, is to, like, you know, reach out to your 5 closest friends, reach out to your family and ask how they are, you know, and don't just accept that they are good, because they all tell you they're good. It's like, how actually are you? What are you actually going through in this life, you know? Because it's conversations like that can really change and save lives. I really believe that.
Yeah, which, again, comes down to people, making sure people are heard. And I've made the mistake many times of asking someone how they are, and they say, yeah, I'm good. You know, but
are you really?
Below that good is like, have you ever seen that photo of that iceberg? Where there's like that, just that tip sticking out, and there's like that massive chunk of ice below that, whatever's above it. That's a lot of times the reality. And that ties very well into the first thing that we spoke about, is not having an upbringing that allows you to have those lifelines of people that you really trust, that have unconditional love towards you and loyalty, to have those conversations with. Because I've had that, and I've been very fortunate that I'm very aware of that, you know, and like people very close around me have not had that. And that is the most powerful realization that I've had while building my business, while becoming someone. We're all trying, but becoming someone, this has been the most valuable thing. It's like, you never know what someone's dealing with, you know, like that's my mission also as a founder, to know what's going on.
And,
you know,
because it's early days, like no one knows at this minute whether he's died of, say, a heart attack, or whether he's taken his own life by overdosing on something or substance, and no one knows that information right now as I'm recording this podcast. But wow, like, you know, just even understanding that, you know, you can never fully understand what someone else is dealing with. You don't understand the legal cases that are happening. You don't understand the arguments that are happening with the family. You don't understand that this guy's just lost his girlfriend. That was his everything, you know?
Exactly.
I mean, I had a thing in May. I broke up with a girlfriend that I thought that would be my wife. Like I wanted that for her, right? And the depths of hell that I went to with my own self, that probably this audience didn't see. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I was thinking to myself, when I was sat there on a park bench, thinking about how the world's burning around, but everyone thinks you're smashing it, that kind of thing. I sat there myself, and I thought to myself, fuck, I'm not at the place where I'm contemplating doing anything like what we're talking about right now. But if 2 more dominoes in my life fell over, you know, one of my niece or nephew gets ill, or something else happens, I could be put there very quickly. Like, very quickly, things can change. And men, especially men, are not taught to be able to talk and reach out to people, right? I'm not saying it doesn't affect women. I'm saying, but men specifically, I know from speaking to a lot of high-level men that this is something that's dealt with many times. And I just want to say to any of you that might be going through this, just reach out to people, man. Like, just speak to people. Just, you know, use your network in the way that it should be used. There's people out there willing to listen. I just don't think that you see it at the time, you know. And
there's no shame in showing emotion. Like, it's one of the things that I feel like a lot of people also value You know, like I talk a lot about that stuff. Like I'm very in touch with my emotions, and you know, it's normal.
But it's how that's another reason why I believe that this podcast and what your content connects with the audience in the way that it does, because it's real, it's raw.
Yeah.
It's people can tell that, one, we love creating it, and two, it's created with a purpose behind it that is to elevate everyone that listens. So I like to ask this question before every podcast ends, because I think it allows you as the guest to fully encapsulate and articulate everything that you've talked about within this conversation. I like to say, if you could just leave like one piece, just one thing to everyone in this audience today that will move their life further forward, just what 1% that they can take action on right now today, what would it be for you?
To not compare yourself and just start sculpting your own statue. Just take information that is for the grab and be very, very careful about what it is that you consume, that you feed yourself in order to sculpt that statue. And look for sources that feel genuine, that stand close to you, and that allow you to put together all of these parameters, which I've talked about, from maybe in my case learning Chinese to, you know, professional sports. All of those things like have shaped me into who I am today. And I think if you're conscious about doing those things and put in an effort, you're going to get very far in life. And make sure that you always remember what's important in the process of doing all of that.
I love that, brother. And I just want to say from me to you, thank you so much for coming on this podcast and understanding my vision for what I wanted to create with you today. I really think you've embodied that and understood what I was trying to bring to the table. And I hope you've seen it in real life from this conversation. And I'll be honored if in the future, rather than you going on 17 different podcasts, when you got something to say, you come and say it on mine. That's all I'm saying. But that's up to you. I'll leave that one with you. And guys, do me a solid favor. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Like this and subscribe to this on Apple and Spotify as well. Leave us a review if you're on Apple, and just support this podcast. If you've gained insights from this valuable conversation with Daniel, do me a favor and just send it to 2 or 3 other people that you think it could help move them forward too. We'll appreciate it on every level. And as always, I love this game. Much love.
If you thought that video was good, why don't you press this one here? Go on, give that a little tickle.